I shall be your moderator this evening. The hour of 7 p.m. has arrived, and a quorum is present. Call this FY 2017 special town meeting to order. So we have both an annual town meeting and a special town meeting tonight. And in order to save time between meetings, I will be asking for a motion to recess the special town meeting now and to reconvene it immediately upon the end of the annual town meeting. I will then open the annual town meeting. May I have a motion?
That the 2017 special town meeting be recessed now and that it will be reconvened upon the conclusion of the 2018 annual town meeting.
Do I have a second? Second. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. The special town meeting is now closed, and I will open the annual town meeting. The hour have arrived, and a quorum is present. I therefore call the annual town meeting to order. We're not a perfect nation, but we're a good nation, and we're still a magnet for the rest of the world. So I'd like you to join me here and think about the words in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Before we start the proceedings, I'd like to spend a few minutes and go over the ground rules for tonight's meeting. Per section 2.2 of the charter, I'm required to appoint a deputy moderator who shall complete the meeting should I be unable to continue. Therefore, I appoint Jack McKean as deputy moderator. Jack, could you stand up? All of those in favor of appointing Jack as the assistant moderator, please say aye or raise your right hand. Thank you. All those opposed, motion carries. Per the Commonwealth of Massachusetts law, there is no smoking on school property, and that includes the parking lot. Please take a moment now to turn off your cell phones, or at least put them on to vibrate, so that we don't disrupt the meeting, and as a courtesy to your fellow residents. Before we start the meeting and the rules, I'd like the selectmen to step up and talk about what they would like to do.
Welcome, everybody. The first order of business this evening was going to be to recognize our one of our outstanding performers in the town this year. Unfortunately, she is unable to be here this evening, so we're going to push that off and invite her to our June 6th selectmen meeting and award her recognition at that point. But before I give it back to Dick, just wanted to recognize two of the selectmen who are finishing up their terms in June and will no longer be on the board. Tim Egan and Jason Creel. You want to thank them for their service to the town of Maynard.
Thank you, Chris. We have some non-resident guests here with us tonight. If there are no valid objections, they will be allowed to remain, but in no case will they be allowed to vote. They will be required to sit in the assigned area here off to my left and wear an identification tag that says that they are a guest. They should be in the first 6 rows of the section over here to my left. Guests will be allowed to speak only if they're requested by a town official, and in that case only be to provide information. They cannot give an opinion. The Commonwealth requires that the town clerk provide the Attorney General's office with detailed notes on every article and every person who speaks this evening. Therefore, I ask that you clearly state your name and street address each time that you speak. There are microphones at the front of each aisle here. Please line up behind the mics that is closest to you, and I will call upon you in turn as we go through the procedures here. Please address all questions and comments directly to me, and I will send them to who is the appropriate person to answer, but not to any other individual. My job is to balance the best flow of new information for the voters to evaluate while keeping the meeting as efficient and moving along as quickly as possible. Therefore, it is important that you make your points concisely and to stay on topic. If there is no new information being presented, I shall call for a vote. If you have more than one question or statement to make, please go to the rear so that the next question can be asked by another person, and then we will cycle through. I will get to you for your second question on your second time up at the microphone. I will, however, allow a follow-up question at my discretion on the first go-around. Since this is all being recorded, I may ask you to start over if we cannot hear you properly. Our Constitution gives us the right to make our opinions known and to ask questions. In fact, we encourage you to do so. However, this does not give anyone the right to be disrespectful to other audience members or to any of the town officials. Should I feel that is happening, I shall ask that person to stop speaking and to take their seat. Per Maynard Town Bylaws, Chapter 1, Section 14, a secret ballot shall be taken on any article or amendment concerning one of the following topics: wages, hours of employment, benefits, conditions of employment, or any town officer or employee, as one. 2, the acquisition, sale, or lease of any real estate by the town. 3, borrowing by the town. 4, authorization of expenditures greater than $10,000, zoning articles, or any appropriation related to any of the above. Each person shall have a book of ballots, and I have one here, I think. What's the first ballot number? The first ballot number is 16. Please check your ballots and to make sure that it starts with 16. If it doesn't, please go out and turn it in and get a proper one. To facilitate the counting, please do not fold your ballots. Just simply hold them upside down when you drop them into the basket so nobody can see them. I shall call for an article. The individual from the sponsoring organization will move that article. All articles moved must be given to me in writing. I shall only read an article if it is moved differently than that printed in the warrant. For lengthy articles, I shall give a brief summary of any article instead. Any amendment to an article must be given to me in writing, and it must include the sponsor's name. It will then be reviewed by town council and the moderator to see that the language meets the criteria for the Attorney General. If you will open your warrant, you will find that there are some reference informations on pages 2, 3, and 4. So, let us begin. I will entertain a motion to waive the reading of the warrant in its entirety.
Bill Coleman, Howard Road. Mr. Moderator, I move that the reading of the warrant in its entirety be waived, but be made part of the record of this meeting, and that the moderator be permitted to refer to each article by subject matter instead of reading each article completely.
Do I have a second? Second. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries. Would the Board of Selectmen start with the first article?
Article 1, acceptance of the town report. Move to move Article 1 as printed in the warrant, except the words "to do" or "act thereon."
Do I have a second? Second. Do I have a Finance Committee recommendation?
Finance Committee recommends the article.
Motion been made and seconded. Discussion. Do you want to say anything, Mr. De Silva?
Excuse me?
This is open for discussion. Do you want to make any statement or comment, or?
Yeah, this article is a procedural article that we have every year, and it allows us to collect reports from the various town committees and distribute them as the town report.
I don't see anybody at the microphone, so all those in favor, please raise your, this is an open vote and a majority. Please raise your right hand. All those opposed? Motion carries. Article 2.
Article 2 is the article obsolete equipment material, and I move that we approve Article 2 as printed in the warrant, except the words "to do or act thereon."
Do I have a second?
Second.
Finance Committee recommendation?
Finance Committee recommends this article.
Discussion.
Okay, Article 2 allows the selectmen to sell or dispose of surplus equipment in accordance with state law, and right now we have no plans to dispose of any equipment of a major variety.
Okay, and not seeing anybody at the microphones, I'll call for the vote. Oh, I have somebody.
What kind of equipment are we talking? Karen Sullivan, 11 Fowler Street.
The equipment that we're talking about is anything that is no longer of value or a use to the town or being used by the town. It can be anything from equipment to facilities.
Vehicles and such?
Yes,
Okay.
which is typically all that ever is.
Thank you.
Okay.
No further discussion. I shall please line up at the microphones if you wish to speak. That's how I'll know that somebody wants to discuss it.
Does this also apply to the temporary fire truck building that's on the ballot?
It possibly
For
could be.
$100,000?
It's possible that it could be some year. It's a possibility in the future, yes.
Now I know which way to vote.
Okay.
There being no further discussion, all those in favor, this is an open majority, all those in favor, please raise your right hand. All those opposed, motion carries. Article 3.
Good evening, Mr. Moderator. Move to approve Article 3 as printed in the warrant, except the words "to do or act thereon."
Do I have a second?
Second.
Finance Committee recommendation?
Finance Committee recommends.
Discussion. Thank you.
Are there any limits as to what funds a department, agency, head,
Just a
board,
moment,
committee
just a
member-
moment, sir.
Sorry.
Do you have anything that you're going to say on the, if not, I recognize this person.
No, go ahead, Dick.
All right. Beyond what's
Could you
listed-
please give your name and street
Sorry,
again, please?
Michael Greendale, 7 Elmwood.
Thank you.
I have a question. Apartment agency, head, board, committee, or officer may incur liabilities against and spend monies from a revolving fund established and authorized. Are there any restraints in terms of monetary limits that aren't listed within the text of just these 2 pages?
Jason?
So I think the question you're asking is, are there monetary limits
Yeah.
on what can be done under these revolving funds?
Yes.
That would be the next article.
Uh-huh.
So what this is, and I probably could have, other than
Okay.
what's basically listed, but this is a change to the bylaw for the revolving funds that has been necessitated by the Municipal Modernization Act that was put into place by the state in the last few years. In their words, to help streamline municipal government.
So it's just a wording change to match with the current state law, more or less. Okay.
Correct.
I recognize the microphone to my right.
Cornelia Keenan, Great Road. Article number 15 has to do with the format for the general bylaws, and this does not follow the format.
Mr. Moderator.
Mr. Moderator?
Mr. Moderator, the Lisa Mead, Town Council, if the reformatting is approved by town meeting, it would be reformatted accordingly.
Thank you. I'm going to have another question, but I can...
I recognize the microphone in the center.
Karen Sullivan, 11 Fowler Street. Can you explain to us what exactly a revolving fund is, so we know how to vote?
Certainly. Actually, Mr. Moderator, request the moderator recognize Town Administrator Sweet.
Okay?
So it's actually Lisa Mead, Town Council. A revolving fund is a fund that's supported by a fee or permit fee service or a revenue service, and so it's self-supporting, and that's why it's deemed a revolving fund. So the fees come in. You don't appropriate out of the regular budget. The fees come in. It supports the fund. If there's no fees there, no money gets spent. If the fees are there, then it's spent according to the revolving fund bylaw.
I recognize the microphone to my right.
Cornelia Keenan, Great Road. You have a table in this, and should not the table be labeled somehow? Because I suspect in future years you're going to have to amend the table.
Mr. Moderator,
Yes.
Town Council,
Ms.
Table is under E. It's called authorized revolving funds. That's the table, authorized revolving funds.
Okay, you do not have that on the top of the table. Is that necessary, or is the Section E sufficient?
Section E is sufficient. It's a spacing issue.
Okay.
Thank you.
Now let's see. I assume if the table has to be changed, there is some comment in this bylaw about possible new funds coming during a fiscal year. If that fund is continued the next fiscal year, the table will have to be changed to accommodate it. Is that correct?
So the bylaw would be for the table of funds that are listed, and any amendments would occur in the next fiscal year except for amounts in the approved revolving funds. And that's a change under the law which allows the Finance Committee and the Board of Selectmen to change the amounts as approved, not the names.
Well, what I'm thinking is if a new fund comes in, both your amount the next fiscal year, because this fund could come in the middle of the fiscal year, and this bylaw takes that into account. However, if you carry it over, you are going to have to amend the table, will you not?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
I recognize the microphone in the center.
Luann Katayo, 1 Wilson Circle. I know we have revolving funds currently, so...
Could you speak up, please?
Oh, I know we have revolving funds currently, so I'm trying to figure out and confirm these are all new ones and figure out if somebody can reiterate the ones that we already have.
Mr. Moderator, they're the same revolving funds that exist today, but now they're codified in the bylaw as proposed.
Thank you.
Okay, no further discussion. I'll call for the vote. This is an open vote with a majority. All those in favor, please raise your hands. All those opposed, motion carries. Article 4, Mr. De Silva.
No, that'll be
excuse
me again.
Jason. Jason.
Move to approve Article 4 as printed in the warrant, except the words "to do or act thereon," and further that the town authorize revolving funds under Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 53E and a half, for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2017, as set forth in the table as printed in Article 3, and this Article 4 in the warrant.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Do I have a Finance Committee recommendation?
Finance Committee recommends.
Motion's been made and seconded. Discussion. Mr. Crew?
So what the table in Article 4 presents are these actual spending limits that we just discussed in the existing revolving funds for the year fiscal 18. So these are the actual financial limits, I think from the first question on the previous article.
I recognize the microphone to my left.
Hi, I just have a question. Beth Alboda, 1 Taylor Road. I was wondering, so I said Beth Alboda, 1 Taylor Road. I was wondering, so these all come from fees, right?
Correct.
So then,
Can you speak up, please?
if these come from fees, then I'm confused about the spending limit. What happens if you get more fees than that to the money?
Those monies would go into the general fund, and because there's a cap limit on here. It is possible during the year, if there were more expenses, that the Board of Selectmen, along with the Finance Committee, could increase the cap, but that's the limit right now.
Okay, thank you.
No further discussion. I'll call for a vote. I recognize the microphone in the center.
Karen Sullivan, 11 Fowler Street.
Could you speak a little slowly when you identify yourself, please?
Okay. Karen Sullivan, 11 Fowler Street. I have a question about whether or not these amounts could be switched around, or are they just set for that particular, like the COA or the
Can't be switched.
electrical wiring? I mean, are they set for that particular venue?
They're specific to the item listed.
They are, okay.
Yep.
Okay, no further discussion. This is a secret ballot and a majority vote, and that'll be ballot number 16. I have lost my ballots. As mentioned before, if you would mark your ballot and just hold it upside down and not fold it. No, I actually had it. I had put it in here somewhere.
That's okay. It was a mulligan. Jason, jump in.
Thank you, Jack.
He RSD had his back up.
Thank you very much, Dave.
Yep. Yeah, it took 3 years.
Okay, while the ballots are being counted, we'll move on to Article 5. Mr. Gavin.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is David Gavin, member of the Board of Selectmen. Mr. Moderator, I move to approve Article 5. Yes. Oh. Okay. Thank you. I'll start over. I move to approve Article 5 as printed in the warrant, except the words "to do or act thereon."
Do I have a second? Second. Do I have a Finance Committee recommendation?
Finance Committee recommends.
Motion been made and seconded. Discussion.
Yes, briefly, Mr. Moderator. Selectman Creel mentioned that the Municipal Modernization Act, and if you ever were to look it up through Google, Governor Baker back in August signed this Municipal Modernization Act, as Jason stated, which was intended to streamline municipal government in many ways, and there are a huge amount of various things that it did, and many of them require the action of town meeting, and this is one of them. And I can further tell you that they'll probably someday be teaching college courses on this particular act, because I went and studied some of it, and I'm not going to go into the classwork that it would take to really explain it. So I'm going to do my best in a brief sense. What this act did was amended the current law by providing communities with a choice regarding how to treat bond premiums net of issuance costs. Towns, once they adopt this, will be able to either apply the premium to it at the issuance, thereby reducing the amount needed to borrow, or place it in a separate fund and appropriate it for a capital project. So to simplify it, if we get premium on a bond, it used to be required that it would have to go into the general fund. The money would come in, it was extra, it would go into the general fund. Now this would allow us to apply that additional fund, the premium, to the project itself, thereby reducing the cost. And let's see if there's anything else I wanted to say. Also, it amends the current law by increasing the amount of surplus bond proceeds that can be applied to a debt service from $1,000 to $50,000. That is it, Mr. Mo.
I recognize the microphone in the center.
Michael Greendale, 7 Elmwood. So my understanding is that previously we would end up incurring quite a bit in interest payments upon occasion because of the previous way this was done, or would it just be transferred to the general fund and then reappropriated for whatever capital project was required? So it's just saving paperwork, really.
Well, I don't know if that's accurate. Kevin, can you clarify the question?
Sorry, is this does this really help us avoid interest, or is this more avoiding paperwork than anything else?
It's Kevin Sweet, Town Administrator. Yeah, it's helping. Essentially, you can any premium that's realized from the sale of the bond can be used to apply towards your principal payment, which ultimately would reduce your payments.
Total interest. Okay.
Prior to, it would actually close out and get closed out to free cash. Now it's utilized to pay against the principal.
All right, thank you.
I recognize the microphone to my right.
Cornelia Keenan, Great Road. I'm sorry, I don't know what a bond premium is.
That was the exact discussion I had this evening with town council. Either town council or...
Mike Guzzo, the finance director. Basically, what it is that when we go out and we go out to bond for, say, a specific item, what the banks will do is they will estimate what the costs will be. So they may estimate, for instance, if we go to Moody's, it's 10,000, or it may estimate certain, legal costs. What ends up happening, it's an estimate. So what ends up happening is when the actual costs come in, they could come out less, and the difference is, say, Moody's, instead of being 10, might be 9,000. And that's really what the difference is between the two. We're saying that here's what was estimated, and this is basically what the actual costs are. The difference would be, in effect, premium. In the past, as I said, there was no choice in the matter. It would, you had to go to free cash or the general fund. Now we do have a choice that if the, in the amounts, but you have a choice as to which one you want to do. So.
Thank you.
Thank you. I recognize the microphone to my right.
Hi, Loretta West Apple Ridge Road. This isn't the same type of bond that a contractor would be required to purchase for construction
No, this is for
jobs.
when the town wants to finance something of a major project or something along those lines.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, okay. But contractors are required to purchase bonds, though, for,
Kevin, would this
Those are-
apply
the-
to a contract?
Those are like insurance policies as opposed to a bond, which is like a loan.
yeah, so it's
In
not
this
surety.
instance.
Not
Correct.
surety, okay, thank you.
There'll be no further discussion. I'll call for a vote, but just before that, I'd like to announce the last article. Ballot number 16, yes, 244, noes 13, the motion carries. On Article 5, this is an open majority, a show of hands. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. All those opposed, motion carries. Article 6.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I move to approve Article 6 as printed in the warrant, except the words "to do or act thereon."
Do I have a second? Second. Do I have a Finance Committee recommendation?
Finance Committee recommends.
Motion's been made and seconded. Presentation, please.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. This article is, again, an annual article that basically establishes what the ranges are for our employees in town. You will note that there is only one difference from the one that we saw last year, and that's specifically under part-time employees. The lowest dollar amount was lowered down to $11 because of the minimum wage increase that passed in the state this past year. I should point out, because I have been asked numerous times over the years, we did not raise the part-time employee rate from $11 an hour to $32 an hour. That's the range within which somebody can be paid, so that everybody understands that.
Okay, I see no discussion. This is wages and salaries, so it is a secret ballot, requires a majority. So if you would mark ballot number 17, please.
How would you like to receive your updates? By snail mail or small paper airplane? Leave it on the table in front of you. Okay, sounds good, thanks.
Building collapse.
Okay, we'll move on to Article number 7. Mr. Gavin.
Thank you again, Mr. Moderator. I move to approve Article 7 as printed in the warrant, except the words "to do or act thereon."
Do I have a second? Second. Do I have a Finance Committee recommendation?
Finance Committee really recommends this one.
Discussion.
Thank you. This, again, ladies and gentlemen, is an annual article that we give the Finance Committee a reserve fund, so that if there are any unexpected expenditures throughout the year, various departments can come in and basically seek through their approval, the monies to make up for what that unexpected expenditure may be. Typically, you have salary increases that were unexpected for one reason or another, or the DPW may have an unexpected issue as well. But that's typically what we're talking about, and it has to go through the Finance Committee to be approved.
I recognize the microphone in the center.
Hi, Luann Kataya, 1 Wilson Circle. $300,000, can you explain what it was in previous years? And if you can also get a synopsis on what fiscal year 17 has brought so far? Thanks.
Yeah, I believe it was, what, 200 or 150 prior? 150?
Actually, it was 1 year, it was 200,000.
One year graduated up from 150 to 200 to this $300,000. This year thus far, my understanding is that the Finance Committee has approved just one reserve fund transfer of $31,000 for fire salaries that were not budgeted in FY16
Can I ask a follow-up?
as a result of a CBA.
Okay, can we go back to the previous fiscal year then, in terms of what was spent?
I
In
don't
terms
have
of the
that
revolving fund?
prepared for you, Luann.
Okay. I was just trying to figure out if we've been
Hold on,
hitting our
hold on,
ceilings
though,
or...
the Finance Committee may have that.
Yeah, they should know.
There's a summary in the report we have on the website. The last few years, we have not reached the maximum or even close. I think for FY16, it was 103,000. For FY15, 284. FY14, 207. It depends. Obviously, the whole idea is it's unexpected.
I've been there. But can I ask another follow-up? There's nobody else?
Yep, go ahead.
So why do you anticipate increasing it again $50,000 if we haven't reached the
Just
ceiling?
for clarification, it did not increase from last year. It remains.
Oh, I'm
the
sorry,
same.
I misheard.
No,
Okay.
last year was
300,
last year was
but-
also 300. The previous year before that was 250,
Okay.
200.
No, actually, it's been 300,000 since 2013, FY.
Since what year?
Since FY13.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay, where this is greater than $10,000, it is a secret ballot, and it's the majority. So if you would be kind enough to mark ballot number 18. Just as a reminder, if you would put your ballots face down, then the counters don't have to adjust. They'll all be in the same direction, which will make the meeting go a little faster. Okay, the results of Article 6 on ballot number 17 was 258 in favor, 10 opposed, and the article carries. Article 8, Mr. De Silva.
Article number 8 is the town's general fund budget for the fiscal year 2018. And the motion is moved to approve Article 8 as printed in the warrant, except the words "to do or act thereon."
Do I have a second? Do I have a Finance Committee recommendation?
Finance Committee recommends.
Motion's been made and seconded. Discussion.
So this is the general budget that covers the town's expenses for the entire year. This is every department, every category. This is the total, and the total expected spending for 2018 is at $40,652,641. It's a wishful thinking, I guess. But that's the budget that's proposed. There's a breakdown online and in the back of the book, but that's the budget we're looking at right now, and that's it.
Discussion. I recognize the microphone to my left.
Mario Salbota, 1 Taylor Road. I'd like to first thank everybody who's been serving our town over the years without any pay. Our selectmen, you, members of the school committee. Thank you. They take time out, you know, their busy lives and families, and they're here. So I would like to, before I introduce the motion that we talked about earlier, I would like to obtain some clarifications if possible. First, a statement, I've been a resident for 10 years. This is almost as long as David Gavin has been selectman. And
so
I still have the...
Please stay to the subject, which is Article
Of course,
8.
it's the budget, right?
Okay.
This is the big one, right?
Yep.
This is when, you know, this is the one that matters, along with a temporary shelter for the fire truck. So I've collected the town reports over the last 10 years, and I am noticing dramatic increases in spending. I've talked to my neighbors across the street. They've given up. Old people have given up. They want to move south. Maine, people are being taxed out of their homes in Maynard. I pay in taxes, property taxes, almost $10,000 on a house that's worth $390,000. It's 3 times as much as a Lexington resident pays for a similar house. And I just don't think this is right, and I think we need to do something about this. And I've been looking through all the budgets and looking at salaries of various peoples, and I'm noticing dramatic increases, not for all. And I ask you to all look and see that our police are really not getting much of a raise. Fire, very little.
So I have to constrain
dispatch.
you to the subject matter?
Yeah, I'd like to finish, please. Yeah. Should I sit down and come back?
No, continue,
Okay.
please.
And you know, my wife is a teacher, so I know she's not been getting big increases. So somebody is, okay? And I would like to get some clarification as to what warrants these increases, especially in the I'm looking at the school administration salaries. For example, I have a number here that's just somewhat staggering. Our superintendent of school makes, made in fiscal year 2015, $177,455. Okay? Is everybody aware of that? And right now, I think it's making over 200,000. Is that correct? I don't even know because I couldn't find the number. Okay. Now I have a PhD. I went to school for 10 years. I never, ever, I'm not even close. I'm half. Okay. This is not okay, and that this needs to stop. Okay. I've communicated this to members of the school committee, and I'm asking you tonight to stand up to the microphone, and if you feel like something is wrong, right? You should stand up and speak, and you know, we may have to vote against the budget. So the issue at hand here is that I would like first some clarity, so I'd like to actually know why what kind of performance deserves these salary increases for our school administrators? Our schools, our teachers are asked to do more with less. And yet, these people make 6 figures, okay? Our students are placing out of Maynard Public High Schools. Maynard Schools, I'm considering placing mine out, and when they do, they take money with them, and it hurts everybody else in this town. Do I introduce the motion now?
Yep, if you like.
So, to that end, I would like to introduce a motion to, I hope this is legally correct, to vote and amend Article 8 in order to cap fiscal 2018 salaries of school administrators to the fiscal year 2017, which is already a lot, trust me.
This will be fiscal 2018.
Right.
that we're
So
talking
no
about.
increases.
I'm sorry?
No increases. No increases, cap to the current level.
Mr. Moderator.
That's your motion to amend?
This is, yes, this is the
Do
motion.
you have this in writing?
I have it in writing.
Please read it as you want it to be.
Motion to vote and amend Article 8 in order to cap fiscal year 2018 salaries of all school administrators to fiscal year 2017 level, including that of the superintendent, Maynard High School principal and assistant principal, Fowler principal and assistant principal, Green Meadow principal and assistant principal, business manager, director of student services, curriculum director, athletic director, technology director. Oh, that's a lot of directors. Okay, Excel of director.
So I have a motion on the floor to amend Article 8. May I have that in
Mis-
writing?
Mr. Moderator.
Do I have a second?
Mr. Moderator.
Just a moment. Do I have a second? Okay. I would like to give this to legal counsel to see if this is a legitimate article. May I excuse for a second?
And you thought this was going to be boring tonight, right?
Mr. Moderator, Town Council, this motion is out of order under General Law, Chapter 71, Section 34. The town meeting may only vote only may vote on the budget as a whole. Items within the budget are up to the school committee and the superintendent and must be dealt with in that legislative session and not this.
Boo.
So the motion is out of order, so
Can you,
do we, at this point...
in plain language?
Town council, just a moment, please. Town council, would you advise me as to whether it's out of order and we take no vote, or we take a vote to say that it's out of order?
No, it is not appropriate to vote at all.
Okay. So the motion is not accepted. And I'd like the school committee to give their presentation before we go any further.
Okay.
Well, so we have the town's presentation and then the school's presentation. And then I don't know if that will solve anybody's questions or answer anyone's questions, but there are several slides from the town budget side and also several slides from the school department, their budget. So if everyone would like to see those, if that's what you want to do, Dick, we'll do that in that order, if that's okay with you.
Yes, please. So we'll have a chance to speak later.
Okay, I'll have another motion ready.
Okay. Okay, so the budget process that we follow every year, that we'll go through some slides and kind of detail for everybody what we do and how we arrive at the budget. So everyone kind of hopefully has a better understanding of what we do as a town, as a school committee, and as fire and police chiefs and everything else. So in November, Kevin Sweet, the town administrator, or whoever else is the town administrator at any given time, delivers a budget message and directive to the various departments. Based on preliminary revenue and expense trends, departments requested to level fund expenses and level service salaries. In the December and January months, the town administrator works with the department heads on the budget and finalizing the budget that we're going to propose for the coming fiscal year. And in February, the second Saturday every February, we have a public meeting, an open meeting for all the town, and it's a joint meeting between all of the department heads and the school department and the FinCom and the selectmen, and it's usually at the library, and we go over the budgets in our joint budget meeting. And then in the following months, between February and April, the FinCom continues to review the budget requests, and the town administrator updates the budget based on our revenue projections. In April, the budget's finalized with us, the selectmen, and the town administrator in all of our open meetings, which you're all welcome to attend. We go through this almost weekly, and then we provide the budget for the warrant. And now we present the budget to you in May, and then May to June, the state will become involved and they will finalize our local aid funding amounts. So this year is shows you how much the budget increased over last year and where the increases were. In the general government, the increase was $220,575. Public safety, our increase was $70,000. Education increased $670,247. The education for Assabet actually decreased in total this year. Public Works was increased by $167,000. Cultural and recreation expenses were an increase of $16,477. Our debt service was decreased by $163,404, and our employee benefits were increased by $516,000 for a total increase of $1.351255 million. And this is the general government section. A $220,575 increase was mostly due to contractual wage increases from our CBA and other expenses that are related to those salaries. A $140,000 increase for our PEG access funds. PEG represents 64% of our total general government increase, which is offset then on the revenue side. And the increase for our building costs shifted from other categories, and overall building maintenance became part of this budget this year. Public safety, an increase of $70,040, which was mostly increase in civilian dispatch salaries, contractual wage increases, and increase in police and fire contracts. Education, an increase of $670,247 on the Maynard side, and on the Assabet side, a decrease of $146,486. And the number of students from Maynard has been increasing by a total of about 14%, and this includes $245,750 of capital assessment on a school building project at Assabet. Public Works, again, an increase of $167,000, which again is mostly wage increases. We are now fully funding our parks, cemeteries, and forestry, and they do not just take care of those things. They work on the school fields. They do a variety of other things. They just fall under the headings of parks and cemeteries. So we're not increasing that amount and just to, mow grass at the cemetery. There's also some increase in additional engineering support, which will be necessary once we start some of the projects that are before the planning board and other places in town. And it's also an increase in some more contractual expenses. Some of those are related to maintenance contracts and those type of things where it's not necessarily wages. Cultural and recreation is an increase of $16,477, and that's mostly in wage increases. For those of you who don't know, Maynard is now considered a cultural district and was granted that designation by the state, so these are the type of expenses that go into creating a cultural district in Maynard. Debt service went down, so it went down. No explanation necessary, and it's not many things that get to go down, but this is one of the things that is going down because, like your mortgage and everything else at home, as time goes on, you owe less or you pay less, and this actually went down. So we can look forward to that hopefully happening again in the coming years. The employee benefits. These are our Medicare, pension, and health insurance costs. The increase was $516,491. And for anybody that's a town employee that's part of this plan, you know how painful it was to get to the point where this was only the increase, the lowest increase we could come to. This was a series of meetings with Kevin, the assistant town administrator, Selectman Donovan, myself, and various representatives from the fire, the police, the schools, and the town hall.
Excuse me. If I could just make a brief announcement. There's a child that is feeling ill by the name of Gianna. Hillary is the mother. Are you here? Okay, excuse me. I just wanted to make sure she has access. Thank you.
I hope they're not pumping them up with candy like Becky does to us. But anyways, this $516,000 increase, what does it represent, Kevin, percentage?
Which one? You lost. I'm just not sure where you
The
were.
healthcare, what's that percent?
Oh, the employee benefits. The significant increase for that is the health insurance cost.
Well, no,
for
what's the
employees.
percent the increase was supposed to be opposed to what it is? How much did we get it down to?
It was 13% through a negotiation with the unions and the insurance advisory committee. The plan design changes, it dropped it down to 5%.
I don't know if anyone heard that one, but so the original increase to the town was going to be 13% on the health insurance, and we actually, through negotiation with everybody in town and all the employees in our healthcare providers, it's now a 5% increase. So that's actually $516,000 is actually a huge savings for the town of Maynard when you consider what it was supposed to be. And now we will turn this over to the schools, and they will present their budget.
Just before the schools committee starts their presentation, I'd like to apologize for the confusion here and not going through the appropriate sequence. And also the results on Article 7 is 253 yes, 25 no. On ballot 18, the motion passes. Mary.
Hi, I'm Mary Marich, member of the school committee. So up here is our district vision and our mission, which I think do really very little to encompass all of the things that we're trying to accomplish in Maynard schools. And having been a part of the school committee for the past 2 years and also being an educator myself, I can tell you that I'm really excited about so many of the things that are happening in Maynard schools. Just to name a couple of those things, the past few years we've been paying increased attention to cultural proficiency, so to students' abilities to communicate across different cultures, to communicate across differences, and their skills that are becoming all the more important in this increasingly diverse world. In addition to that, last Thursday, for anyone who was at our school committee meeting, you'll know that the district is paying a lot of attention to student social emotional growth, because we know that as state standards have risen and academic requirements have gotten higher, a lot of students are suffering as a result of just not being able to cope with the stress, not being able to cultivate characteristics such as grit and perseverance and resilience, and Maynard is paying a lot of attention to those things. In addition, the high school has been implementing these different pathways so students can graduate with a certificate in global competency. So I just want to say, as expenses are rising and we are all worried about the budget and worried about taxes in Maynard, that I really think there's a lot to be excited about with our schools. We have student representatives who come to our meetings on a regular basis, and when we ask them, what is the best part of Maynard schools? They said it's relationships with our teachers. It's the ability to do more than one thing, to not just be an athlete, to not just be a musician, but our district is small enough that it supports students participating in a wide range of activities. So, although we've had a difficult couple of years when it comes to the budget, I would say that in general, it's not all doom and gloom, and that if you look at our budget, we are relatively well funded when you look at us in comparison to surrounding districts. And the state sets what's called our foundation budget. It's just a recommendation, and most districts operate above the foundation budget. But we have been well above our foundation budget for some time. And I don't think that means that we're not being financially prudent. I think we're being very prudent. But at the same time, you know, the town has been very generous to the schools, and I want to thank them for that generosity. When my husband and I moved here 9 years ago, there was a lot of word on the street about Maynard schools, that people would move in and maybe their kids would go to elementary school here, but then they would start to move and leave the district. And I'd like to say, and I think we've seen, that trend is starting to reverse. So we even have a few students who have tried other schools, have gone out to a charter school or whatnot, and then have decided for different reasons to come back to Maynard schools. So if you take a look at this slide here, this shows just the history of our budget, our past budget requests, what we've requested to maintain level service, so just to maintain what we have. And then some years we've also submitted a growth budget of here's what we would like in an ideal world if we were able to add and supplement to the programs we have in place already. So you'll see that, you know, paying attention just to this year, to maintain level service, we had asked for a 6.25% increase, which is a large increase given that we have Proposition 2.5 and we can only increase taxes so much within the town. So as you can see, the town, after we met in February, we heard our budget, we've heard from the town administrator that we would receive a 4% increase, which left us with a 2.25% deficit. Unfortunately, after that meeting in February, we found out we also had some out-of-district placements for special education, which were mandated by law to provide a free and appropriate education for all students. And so that led to an additional $275,000 of costs. So that left us with a deficit, as we're looking at the next fiscal year, of around $650,000. Luckily, since then, in collaboration with the town and with the Board of Selectmen has made, you'll see, an amendment to an article that we'll vote on tonight, Article S1. And if that amendment and the article pass, that would give the schools an additional $275,000 to help offset that $650,000 deficit. So just to show, over the past several years, here are some of the things that we've done to try to increase efficiencies and to increase revenue for the schools. So I'm not gonna, we've gone over these before at a February meeting, so I'm not gonna go over each and every one, but if you have questions, obviously I can answer those later. But these are just some of the things we've done to help save money. We've also, over the past couple years, made a lot of reductions. And I think last year in particular, we heard from a lot of parents who were concerned about rising class sizes in our schools. You know, as I said, the students that we talk to, they say we value relationships. And I think smaller class sizes make it easier for teachers to get to know their students. And so this year, as we were looking at making cuts and knowing we weren't going to be able to do all the things that we want to be able to do, we really tried hard not to cut classroom teachers because we heard that as being a really big priority for families here in Maynard. So these, just to show you, there have been a number of hits that the schools have taken over the past several years. This chart here, basically to explain this, I hope you can see the colors, basically to explain it, red, anything red is bad, and green, purple, and gold are good. So the red is for students who might choice into other districts. So we participate in choicing with other schools, and the way that works is if there are open seats in other schools that are part of that collaborative, our students can choice out to go to other districts. So if you look, if you look back to fiscal year 2010, you can see our choice. We had a very high number of students who were choicing out of Maynard, and you'll see that that has decreased over the year. There's a slight spike this year for fiscal year 2017, but as a whole, those numbers have been going down. The green numbers are for students who choice into Maynard. So we only allow students to come in if we have empty seats. So those decisions are typically left to building level administration. So principal will say, oh, I think I might have 2 seats for 5th grade. And so then we open up those seats to students in other towns who might want to come into Maynard. The purple, the SPED tuition, that is for special education students who come in for a program that we might offer that another district might not. And when that happens, they pay tuition to Maynard schools. And lastly, the orange up there is for our exchange students. So Maynard High School has been participating in an exchange program over the past, I forget how many years, I want to say 5 years perhaps, but students from other countries can come in and they pay full tuition to come to Maynard. And again, it's only if we have seats available because we can't overcrowd the school. So those numbers, as the high school's gotten more full, we haven't been able to take in quite as many exchange students. This talks a little bit about our circuit breaker funding, which is the money that we get from the state to help offset our special education costs. And the amount of money that we get is based on our costs from the year before, and it's sort of a reserve fund to try to offset things that come up. So if we have a student who moves into the district in the middle of the year, who is a special education student, maybe needs an out-of-district placement, these are funds that are meant to help offset those expenses. So we're always getting paid for the year before, and we have to spend the funds that year or the following year. So just in terms of, this is in terms of looking at contractual obligations for the schools, these are some of the things that you'll notice some of the increases, for example, for transportation. So this year for fiscal year 2017, transportation was $295,000, and for next year, $461,000. So there was a huge spike in transportation costs. I'm happy to say that since the time when we presented this in February, that our business manager, Michelle Resendez, has found some additional savings. So has found us a savings of an additional $20,000 by renegotiating a contract for transportation. So again, these are some of the other major cost drivers. You can see the salaries up there. Salaries are the biggest cost driver by far within the district. So here are the major 4 categories, and you can see what the percent increase was for next fiscal year in terms of our request. And obviously, we have to make some cuts to those requests. So here's the budget breakdown by cost center, and you'll notice on this that our costs for special education are higher than any individual school within the district. So those costs are somewhat unpredictable. They're things we can't do anything about. Again, they're legally mandated, as they should be. And, but this just gives you a sense of where all of the money goes. So in terms of challenges, it's been a contract negotiation year. We still have some outstanding contracts to settle. Obviously, I talked about the increases to special education, to out-of-district placements, and transportation. We compare ourselves often to a couple of other districts that are similar to ours demographically. And one of the challenges we do have a 17% special education student population, which does drive costs to some extent. If you compare us with Millis, it's a district we compare ourselves to. They have a 6% special education population. So this number up here, we had hoped with Charlie Baker, with Governor Baker's proposed budget for next year, that there would be an increase in Chapter 70 funding. And I just got the number today that it actually turns out to be about a 2% increase on our Chapter 70 funding. However, there was a bill on the House floor that would have increased that a little bit more. And again, that's just to a portion of our budget. It's not to the full school budget. It's the portion that we get from the state. So I just want to run through these 3 slides just to say that by ed reform, we are required to have a school council at each building, a school improvement council, and they are made up of teachers, of parents, and they make recommendations for the things that that group of folks thinks our schools need most. And the past few years, we've had them come to present to us at our school committee meetings, and it's been a little bit disheartening because they do a lot of great work, a lot of hard work, a lot of prioritizing, but these are typically for things that they want to add to the district. And so the past couple years, we've been unable to take these into too much consideration because of the cuts we've had to make. Sure. So I love hearing from the school improvement councils when they come to present, because a lot of this is where the innovation happens, and you do hear about, the programs people want to grow or the ideas that they have, and they're wonderful ideas. And I hope to have a year sometime where instead of the cuts, we're actually able to implement some of these. I'm sorry? Oh, PEG funding comes from, Kevin, do you want to explain the PEG funding? It's money that comes to us from cable companies.
Yeah, that's correct. It's part of the Verizon and Comcast licensing fee agreement that pay for the public education and government access fee that subscribers have on their bill. That money's part of the agreement, and then part of that portion is it's appropriated far in the operating budget, and it's essentially neutral with the revenue that's supplied from that from those funds.
So I've mentioned some of these, that since February we found out about the additional expenses with regards to special education. We've also met and talked about proposed reductions, and then we've also found some additional savings. So I mentioned the transportation savings from the renegotiated contract. We also will save an additional $15,000 with the renegotiated Xerox contract. But in the grand scheme of things, they're small savings when you're forced to cut $376,000. So for next year, when we came up with the initial list of proposed reductions, they included things in all of these categories. So like I said, we had heard last year from parents who were concerned about increasing class sizes, and so we were trying to minimize the reduction of classroom teachers. So we looked at things like our administrative staffing, and we anticipated this, knowing that last year had been a tough budget year. So in the fall, we reached out to some other districts, found out how their central offices are staffed, how their buildings are staffed with regards to administration. There are a lot of folks who've come to our regular meetings know what some of these detailed cuts look like, and I'm happy to speak to them if anyone wants more information. But we're hoping that as a result of the article this evening, that if that article is approved, that it'll give a little bit more money back, and then we can make some decisions about which of these reductions we will not have to make. So moving forward, I actually feel like as hard as the budget season has been, so there have been some really good positives to come out of it, and part of that is just increased collaboration with the Board of Selectmen. We are a small district, and as we've said at other public meetings, there are a lot of things that we want for this town. There's so many things we want to do, and yet we have to think about what we can support and what we can sustain. And I think it makes sense for us not just to meet at an annual town meeting, but to find some way to reach out to our constituents and to find out, what do you value most? What matters most to you? Because if we can't fund everything, then we do have to make some hard decisions about what we want. As we go forward, we're hoping next year, we're planning to have, a committee that could be made up of a member from school committee, a member from the Board of Selectmen, and from Finance Committee, and so we can keep each other apprised of what's going on with our budgeting process. Because although I think we do a great job with our piece of the pie, we're all working on these separate pieces of the pie in silos, and it makes a lot more sense maybe to talk together so that if we know, what, we're not gonna be able to fund all this, that we're reaching out earlier in the year to say, okay, let's make some hard decisions as a town. So that's about it, and I'm happy to take questions.
Mario
Recognize the
Salvora,
microphone.
1 Taylor Road.
I recognize the microphone to my left.
Apologize. Mario Salvora, 1 Taylor Road. Could you expand on the proposed cuts there, so that what are you guys considering? What is being considered other than letting teachers go and asking teachers to do more with less?
Sure. I can read you through the list. So one of the cuts is to a position in central office, which was a half-time position for a special projects coordinator. Cutting a half-time position, assistant principal position at Green Meadow, so we could share an assistant principal between Fowler and Green Meadow. Cutting secretaries, 1 in each building, 1 in central office. Cutting a Spanish immersion paraprofessional and 1 para that we would lose through attrition anyway for a program we no longer have. Cutting custodians, 2 full-time, 2 part-time. In terms of teachers, cutting 1, the community connection special ed teacher, again through attrition, we no longer have the student who was part of that program. Reducing music from a full-time position to a .6 position at Fowler, which would eliminate small group instruction for music, and we've heard a lot of concern from parents about that. I should say we've heard a lot of concern about a lot of these things. So, you know, we don't want to have to make any of these cuts. We've heard about the importance of our custodial staff, and I firmly believe that. We've heard about the importance of our secretaries. I believe that as well, and their importance. Teacher stipends, eliminating Green Meadow and Fowler lead teacher stipends. The grade 8 advisor, which that cut made sense because the grade 8 got that position when they were at the high school, but now that they're moving back to Fowler, that one actually makes sense to do. Combining the young Republicans and the young Democrats into one club, which would cut one stipend, which I think is a fabulous idea. Get them talking to each other now. Eliminating individual mentors. And then in terms of non-union staff, eliminating recess and lunch monitors, those positions, and having teachers do those jobs. And then in terms of program staff, high school assistant football coach, Fowler assistant football coach, and an assistant track coach.
Great, thank you. That was very thorough. I'm fully supportive of cutting the administrations first, and I encourage you, please look at the salaries other school administrators surrounding towns make. Hudson, much larger. You have there. We're a small district. We can't afford to pay these large salaries. Look at Hudson, and you will see how much the superintendent makes there. Okay.
I hear you. I do want to say, you know, I've done a lot of comparisons of our per pupil costs compared to other districts, and as I've done that research and have asked a lot of questions, what I've come to understand is what's difficult with Maynard is we're surrounded. You know, Hudson is a little bit further away, but a lot of the districts that surround us are ones where, you know, they can afford to pay teachers more, they can afford to pay administrators more, and I'm not saying that we should match that, but I think it's a challenge we face because to get good people, cost of living here, as you know, is not cheap, and so we have to look at both. I think we are really trying to look at particularly the demographically similar districts and what they pay.
I recognize the microphone in the center.
Karen Sullivan, 11 Fowler Street. I have a suggestion. I work at Open Table, and and other church things, and a lot of it is volunteer-based. How could that be incorporated into the school systems?
Oh, it's a great idea. I think you should come to one of our school committee meetings.
I would
Let's
love
talk-
to.
let's
I would
talk
love to.
more. I love
I would
that
love to.
idea.
Recognize the microphone to my left.
I don't want to hold this up if anybody else. So, again, I just want to say one more thing. I want to make sure that everybody understands that we value our teachers. They're doing a lot for our students. The students, as you mentioned, value the most the interaction with the teachers. Larger class sizes, firing teachers, it shouldn't be even an option, in my opinion, okay? There are other places to cut. The gravy train has to end. And I'm speaking for a lot of people on my street, elderly people that don't come to the town meeting, they've given up, and I'm telling you once again, this is a real situation.
Recognize the microphone in the center.
Hi, my name's Jamie Babayan, and I live on Omar Avenue. And I have a question and a statement. I guess my question is, with the students leaving, does that include the cost for charter schools, for kids going to charter schools from this district in our budget?
It does if there are schools that we are part of our, I don't know if Dr. Girardi wants to take this, but it has to do with the schools that are part of the collaborative that our kids can choice into, and they could also choice into here.
Okay. And if it is not part of the collaborative,
well,
how to?
Let me let him speak to it.
Thank you.
I will recognize the school superintendent.
Thank you for introducing me. The chart that you saw did not show charter students or vocational students. That's a separate, it's a separate item. But what we were talking about on that chart was school choice, which some schools districts are open to school choice and some aren't. We have been open to school choice for quite some time, and some of our neighbors are as well.
But does the calculation for charter schools come under that budget?
It does not.
The budget that we're voting on?
No, it does. It comes under the town budget.
So the budget that we're looking at today, the kids that are going to charter schools, the calculation that we're doing when they leave here to pay that charter school is included in this budget.
It's not part of the chart that we shared with you, but it is part of the town's budget. There's
Part
a
of the
cherry
town's
sheet where there are assessments for those costs. So it's part of the general town budget, the total
Part of
town
the
budget.
general, not part of the school budget that we're looking at right now in this article.
I think the article is the whole budget.
We're looking at Article 10, and we're looking, or Article, I'm sorry, we're looking at Article 8, and we're talking about a lump sum budget right here for schools, public safety. Is the charter schools included in that lump sum budget?
I believe that that is the total budget for the town.
Mr. Moderator, Kevin Sweet, Town Administrator. As Dr. Girardi said, that is not included in the budget. It's actually offset as a cherry sheet offset as an assessment for charter school sending. So it actually ends up, whatever we receive from local or state aid is offset by any assessments we receive. And some of those, one of those assessments is charter school sending tuition.
Okay, thank you.
Just to say a little bit more about that. So
Can you,
the chapter, I was just
Can
going to, oh, go ahead, go ahead.
I was going to recognize the next speaker here in the center.
I was just going to say that the
You're
chapter.
welcome to ask again. It's just that I want to give everybody a chance to speak.
The Chapter 70 funding that we receive is based on, it's per pupil, and it's a certain amount of money for different types of students. And so if students are leaving the district to go to a charter, then they're not counted in our Chapter 70 funding. So in that sense, we lose some money from that.
I'm Kathy Larson. I'm at 13 High Street, and I was just wondering.
Could you speak in close to the microphone?
Can you hear me now? So it's Kathy Larson, 13 High Street, and I just wanted some clarification on why the transportation budget increased so much.
I should ask Michelle to speak to that. She's much better at explaining it.
Hello, I'm Michelle Resendez, the business manager. The transportation budget increased, one, because of out-of-district placements. With every out-of-district placement, we're required to transport. The regular transportation increased due to contractual obligations, and the special ed, the way that we were assessed in our in our previous transportation collaborative was it was a percentage form basically. So with that increase, they give us our number, what our percentage is going to be for that year, and it just increased that much due to their increase in expenses.
I recognize the microphone to my left.
I'm sorry, but I did not understand that.
So that we have two different types of transportation. One type of transportation is regular, yellow school bus transportation. A portion of that increase is because due to contractual obligations with our bus service for that. Every year it goes up a percentage. We have a 3-year contract with them. The other percentage increase was because we were part of a collaborative that based our special ed transportation costs on a percentage that they assessed to us. So our percentage of what their expenditures were. They had an increase in their expenditures, so our percentage stayed the same but was at a higher amount of money. So I think Mary had mentioned earlier that I did some negotiation and looked into a couple of other opportunities for us to use for special ed transportation, and we have moved to a different model with a different collaborative, Assabet Valley Collaborative, which is a per pupil, per ride, per day cost versus an assessment model. Is that better, or?
Mario Sloboda, 1 Taylor Road. I would like to know, since my motion was denied on a technicality, what options do I have, do we have, to say who determines the salaries of the school administrators? I don't know. Do you know?
It's the purview of the school committee.
The school committee sets those. So Dr. Girardi is currently under contract, and the school committee sets his rate of pay and any potential increase.
And may I
So
ask,
that's a job of the school committee by
right.
law.
May I ask what, is it performance-based, or how does that get determined?
It's performance-based.
Because according to my calculation, he had and others, I don't want to single him out, I'm sorry, 10% salary increase
That is incorrect.
over the last 2 years.
That is not correct. So he has had a
Can you tell me what the right number is?
So hold on, let me answer. He has had a very standard cost of living increase. I understand that overall, we can debate whether it's too much money overall.
It
But
is.
He has had a cost of living increase similar to the teachers. It's just due to his position and years of service, his salary will always look greater than a teacher's salary, unfortunately.
No,
It's
I
just the way of the world.
Sure,
But yeah,
sure, I
so he had
understand
a
that.
standard 2% cost of living increase last year, in last year's budget, not this year's budget.
Don, we should talk and check the numbers, okay?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep. Come to any
Recognize the
meeting.
microphone to the right.
On a related question,
Could you,
oh,
your
I'm
name
sorry.
and street, please?
Lauren Heckman Heath, 42 Walnut Street. So what is the forum for discussing the budget overall? So the amendment was proposed and denied in this forum, and I understand that. But we would have to go to the school forum to discuss the school budget and propose an amendment there, and then a general forum, presumably, to discuss the general budget there. Is there a single budget forum where we can actually propose and discuss the budget overall?
Mr. Moderator?
Yes, go ahead.
So, to be very clear, under state statute, the school committee is solely responsible for setting the school budget and then is presented to town meeting as set forth tonight. The Board of Selectmen are responsible with the Finance Committee for the town side budget. They start their budget discussions in a forum in February that the chair announced earlier. And then the Finance Committee and the Board of Selectmen have hearings on an ongoing basis until town meeting.
I recognize the microphone to my right.
Hi, Marie Gunderson, 119 Parker Street. This question, I guess, is the overall motion. I noticed that a lot of the increased discussion was wage and salary, wage and salary, wage and salary. And it was hard to get the overall percent because it went by quickly. But how does the increase in wage and salary for the town budget compare to the residents in general? Because the increases that I see seem to outweigh the type of increases that I have and what we see reported in the press. It seems that our budget grows faster than our combined town salary does. So each year we're a percent behind, and that grows and compounds each year. So I was curious how the wages in this budget compare to the general wages, because the increases do seem to accelerate.
It's a good question, Marie. So with any contractual employee, there are typically, I can speak to the schools, there are typically a number of different columns, and we call them steps. So you come in, say you come in with a bachelor's degree, here's what you'd make year one. And year two, there's an increase typically because you have another year of experience, so you get a bump for that. And then when we negotiate a contract, there's what's called a COLA, the cost of living adjustment for each year. That's to just offset the increasing cost of living. And so, each year you have the step change, and then usually the COLA that's negotiated through the contract. But it's the same in with any school contract, you would see that.
Thank you. It's good to have a contract like that. We don't. I got 1.25% for the year. Yeah. But I was speaking the overall, because at every discussion of these budget items, there was a wage. The big part of the increase was wages.
Mr. De Silva, do you want to?
Thank you.
So all of the other contracts in town that we were looking at are collective bargaining contracts, and they're negotiated with the various groups, whether it's police, fire, DPW, pretty much all of the town employees, except for the staff in town hall itself, are union employees. And as such, they're operating under collective bargaining agreements. And I think that you could check with the rank and file and the police and the fire and the DPW. And we're not throwing money away and throwing money out the window. We battle hard when we bargain for the best rate we can get in not only insurance, but in wages and in every other part of the collective bargaining agreement. So we do it, you know, but it's a collective bargaining situation, and at the end of the day, we have to pay the price that's the going wage for those particular jobs. In Maynard's police and fire, if you go to the surrounding towns, are not paid as high as those guys. They're paid well, but not as high as some of the surrounding communities.
Thank
So
you. Yeah, I don't begrudge people a wage. It's just when you hear that being the main cause, and for those of people like myself in the audience, we see the increase is greater than what we're making. And if that increases each year, then our ability to pay that increase becomes more difficult with time. Thank you.
Well,
I hear
Mr.
that.
Moderator, if I
Yeah.
could just, as Kevin Sweet, Town Administrator, just to expand beyond what Selectman De Silva said, the town has 11 collective bargaining agreements as a whole, town and school. There's 7 unions on the school side, as he eloquently relayed to you as the collective bargaining process. The overall budget increase, which is what I thought I heard you ask, was a 2.6% increase from FY17 overall to FY18, which is inclusive of all salary and expenses between town and education.
Okay, I wanted to see, because I tried to do it quickly,
Yeah.
and it looked like it was well over
So
3%.
the budget increase as a whole from FY17 total budget to FY18 is 2.6%.
Okay, thank you.
I recognize the microphone to my right.
Lauren Heckman Heath, Walnut Street. I see the debt service in the amount of 3.6 million. Simple question: what is the breakdown of principal and interest, and what's the total outstanding principal?
Mike, do you have an answer for that?
And while that's being generated, if the budget is voted down, what happens next?
He's researching to get you an answer.
You needed a breakdown between principal and interest, did you say? Yeah, for FY18, the principal is $2,640,335, and the interest is $986,918. Oh, that's.
I think that leaves 700,000 unaccounted for.
We don't have.
Did that answer your question?
I believe that leaves 700,000 unaccounted for, and I was curious as to the total outstanding principal.
I don't think we have that. Yes, Cheryl.
If you don't mind, while he's researching that, I'll take another question, then we'll come back and answer your question.
No, I don't think we have it.
Edward J. Mullen, 5 Nancy Circle, Maynard. I support this article. I've been there and done this. Selectmen and School Committee. The number I'm going to toss at you is 2.5. That's the property tax limitation. And these ladies and gentlemen up here know that number. They know that number when they go in there. So when they start thinking about administrative raises or teachers' raises or public union raises, they're thinking of 2.5. They're not going to throw 5 or 6% unless it's really, really important to sustain quality. I wrote down this: you get what you pay for. I will talk to you with the school system now. This school system that we are running now is unbelievable. The lady up there showed you the chart. When I was on here, on the school committee, the chart of school choice kids was rolling out of here. Now the school choice kids are coming here, as verified by this chart. The Assabet kids now, there's a great school education in Assabet, but they're finding out that there's a quality education occurring at Maynard High School. Also, I would like to have you explore where these kids, where these graduates from Maynard High School are going. I have 4 grandchildren going through Maynard High School. My oldest granddaughter going to Clemson. My youngest, next girl, St. Joseph's in Maine. These kids are getting a quality education, and you're getting what they pay for. Now, these gentlemen over here on the selectmen are not going to throw money around unless it's very needed. And so, therefore, we can nitpick, but as the people have been saying, if you want to nitpick, you have to go to the school committee meeting. You have to go to the selectmen meeting and see what they're talking about, administrative salaries and all that. But now is not the place to it. The general budget is a very valid discussion here about the $40,652,000. You can talk that back and forth. But as far as nitpicking and picking out specific salaries and specific individuals, I disagree with that concept totally. I support this budget.
Do we have an answer for this gentleman? No.
We have summary reports, Mr. Moderator, and we're looking in the town report for the aggregate numbers.
Laura Neckham Heath, Walnut Street. And one final question. If the budget is voted down, what is the next forum and what happens next?
The town meeting would have to come back before July 1st.
Thank you.
All right, there no further discussion. We'll vote on the article number 8 for $40,652,641 on ballot number 19. While the collectors are collecting the ballot, I would just like to mention that Maynard will be celebrating its 150th anniversary here shortly. And there is some tables out in the lobby when you leave, where you can fill out a survey that will help us celebrate this 150th anniversary. Okay, Mr. Egan. Article number 9.
How do I follow that one
Just a
up?
moment, I have a point of order.
Ron Calabria, Deer Path. I thought I heard the school committee say they were amending the budget article, but I didn't hear any amendment.
No, they made reference to a special town meeting article, which is to come yet.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. Egan.
Before I read the motion, yes, the China Ruby is going to be okay. Mr. Moderator, my motion is to approve Article 9 as printed in the warrant, except the words "to do" or "act thereon."
Do I have a second?
Second.
Finance Committee recommendation?
Finance Committee recommends.
Presentation.
This is an annual article that is required for the annual appropriation of CPA reserve funds. This request is from the Community Preservation Committee, and the total budget for FY18 is $246,000.
Discussion. No discussion. I'll call for a vote. Article 9 requires a secret ballot and a majority vote. And we're still counting, so we'll take a short hiatus here. Besides the 150th anniversary that I was just speaking about and the survey tables out on the lobby, there's also a table out there for volunteers. And as we have a $40 million budget, you can imagine that there's lots of work to be done in the town. And so anybody who would like to volunteer on these committees and be part of how we run the town, please go out and look at the different boards and appointments that are out there. And if you're interested, please sign up, and we'll contact you and see where that leads, and become a part of the organization of our community. Thank you. Yes.
Karen Sullivan, 11 Fowler Street. Can you tell me what the community housing reserve is?
I'm sorry?
The community housing reserve, what is that?
Are you talking on an article here?
No, it's on Article 9. It's one of the
So
items.
we'll have to wait.
I'm just asking what, under reserves, it says community housing reserve. I'm not sure what that means.
The,
Hang on.
Okay.
well, Mr. Moderator, I think for informational purpose, but you already called for a vote on that matter?
Well, I haven't yet because they're still counting the previous one, so we're kind of in limbo here at the moment.
Okay.
So, Mr. Minor, Bill Cranshaw, 20 Mockingbird Lane. I'm a member of the Community Preservation Committee. And that particular Community Housing Reserve Fund is used to finance projects that enhance and create affordable housing in Maynard.
Okay, so I had already called for a vote because nobody was calling here, and so we're about to vote on Article 9. I will allow one additional comment, but because nobody stepped up at the time that I called for the vote, I'm not going to let it go any further.
She had asked, and I'm not sure everybody heard, you know, as for example, Powder Mill Road and the subsidized housing there, and that is one of the eligible units. It's not the primary funding for that housing authority property, but it is eligible for some of this funding, yes.
I hope that answered your question. Did it? Okay, so Article 9, it's a secret ballot, majority. Please mark ballot number 20.
So it's for 8?
Mr. Donovan, you're going to move the next article, but just before you do, article number 8 was 254 yeses, 35 noes. The article passes.
Good evening, everyone. Terrence Donovan, Board of Selectmen. I'm going to move Article number 10. I move to approve Article 10 as printed in the warrant, except the words "to do or act thereon."
Do I have a second? Second. Finance Committee recommendation?
Finance Committee recommends.
Presentation.
Sure. So the Sewer Enterprise Fund budget, fiscal year 2018, it's an annual article. This year, the article is asking for a total FY 2018 budget of $2,984,960, broken down in the warrant. The budget increases themselves are $119,000, driven by a $44,000 increase in the wastewater treatment plant operation contract, the creation of a $60,000 capital line item, and a $13,000 increase in health insurance costs for the employees.
Okay, any discussion? Just waiting for the counters to wrap up the previous article. Recognize the microphone in the center.
Ron Calabria, Deer Path. You know, we hear about the water and sewer, and I realize this is a sewer fund having significant capital improvements needed over time. So since the total revenue and the total expenses here equal, is there somewhere in these expenses where there's provision towards future capital expenditures?
Kevin Sweet, Town Administrator. Yeah, we have budgeted for a line item in both the water and sewer budget for this year, an anticipated capital expense outlay or capital outlay line item to deal with some routine capital projects throughout the fiscal year.
So that's in the expense line?
That's correct.
So there's nothing anticipated as extra or surplus to fund the long-term needs of the sewer plant?
No,
or the sewer pipes?
There's been no other appropriation for FY18. We're still dealing with some backlog of FY17 improvements from prior approved articles. And beyond what's budgeted for, there's no other appropriation.
So that means the reserves are adequate?
What's that?
Does that mean then that the reserves are adequate?
No.
So then how does that get taken care of?
It's built in there for some, a little bit of, to add to the reserves for the closeout for retained earnings.
Where is that line item?
Yeah, there's no line item for that in the budget.
I'm confused, and I don't mean to press this, but by state law, the revenue expense have to equal. They do if there's no line item for.
Yeah, there's no budget for. It's not budgeted for stabilization or retained earnings.
Okay.
We're anticipating conservative estimates, but there's no budget for future reserves.
So should there be?
Yeah. Yeah, we have to raise the rates beyond what we just did, but that's a continued discussion that we continue to have The rates should account for those future projects, as you know.
Okay, thank you.
I actually misspoke on the appropriation. The appropriation is $2,457,742, my mistake.
No further discussion. I'll call for a vote. Prior to that, however, the results of Article 9, 257 yes, 19 no. Article 9 passes. I will now vote for Article 10 on ballot number 21. Yes?
The motion says the total request is for $2,457,742, but this article says $2,984,960. I see that, but why is there $2,984,960 under expenses indirect, and the total FY 2018 budget is $2,984,960, not $2,457,742. Is there another page past this one?
Nope.
Yeah, so I could speak to that. The actual appropriation is the $2,457,742. The indirect cost is accounted for elsewhere. That's just the total budget, but the actual appropriation is the 2,457.
Explain that. Can you explain indirect costs?
Yeah, Mike, you want to do it?
The difference of the indirect costs are basically costs that are already.
I can't hear you.
The indirect costs that you see, are included in the general fund budget. And if you know, so
Okay,
all these are transferring costs from, to the general fund.
So the indirect are from the general budget and the other parts from
Exactly.
the enterprise fund.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
So you'll be voting on ballot number 21. And the collectors could collect the vote for Article number 10. Okay, Mr. Donovan, Article number 11.
Sure. So the annual article for the Water Enterprise Fund Budget Fiscal Year 2018. I move to approve Article 11 as printed in the warrant, except the words "to do or act thereon."
Do I have a second? Motion been made and seconded. Do I have a Finance Committee recommendation?
Finance Committee recommends.
Presentation.
So in this one, the budget is increasing $194,000. This year, it's driven by increases of $20,000 for equipment, $40,000 for supplies, $80,000 for chemicals, $25,000 for water sampling, and $21,000 for health insurance. The total appropriation is for $1,508,801. The total budget is $1,815,851, but the appropriation is different. It's listed below.
Okay. Any discussion? As you can see, this is similar to the previous one where from taxation is 1.5 million versus 1.8 being spent, similar to the previous article. And the counters are counting. When they're finished, we'll be using ballot number 22. It's a secret ballot, and it's a majority. All right, ballot number 22. Everybody vote, go collect. All right, on Article 10, 259 yes, 14 no, majority required, the article passes. Mr. Gavin. Article
Thank you,
12.
Mr. Moderator. This is Article 12. Thank you. I move to approve Article 12 as printed in the warrant, except the words "to do" or "act thereon."
Do I have a second? Do I have a Finance Committee recommendation?
Finance Committee recommends the article.
Presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Town meeting back in 2008, as you may recall, we basically adopted the Affordable Housing Trust, but unfortunately we didn't adopt the bylaw to go along with it. So although I was pleased to be named as a member of the Housing Trust, it met twice, we then realized that it was a meeting that never, or two meetings that never happened, because they can't happen unless we have adopted the bylaw. So we're here tonight to ask to have the bylaw adopted by the community, which will then allow the Affordable Housing Trust to start the process of working to find affordable houses for Maynard to develop particular areas or what have you.
Okay, any discussion? I recognize the microphone on my right.
Cornelia Keenan, Great Road. What is the relation of this trust to the Maynard Housing Authority?
The Maynard Housing Authority.
Yeah.
I mean,
aren't they concerned with the same things?
So the Maynard Housing Authority is created pursuant to the Housing Authority statute and is a completely independent, autonomous body from the town. The Affordable Housing Trust is a town trust and gets their powers from this bylaw and from the statute, and could get funding and has different purposes and goals than the Affordable Housing Trust. They certainly, the Maynard Affordable Housing Authority, they certainly have similar goals for sure, but they're completely separate.
Thank you.
I recognize the microphone to my right.
Steve Bonford, Dane Road. Under the liability section, it said that the trust is a public employer and the public employees for the purposes of General Laws 258. What type of employees will these be listed under?
I'll leave that to council to answer as well.
So-
It's a legal question.
So because the trust is created as a municipal entity, anybody they employ is a public employee, and they're considered a public employer for the purposes of the Tort Claims Act. And so if they act negligently, or if somebody gets hurt while they're employed by them, then that would be covered under the Tort Claims Act for limitation of liability purposes.
Okay, no further discussion. We're going to give the counters a rest, and we're going to vote open majority. So all those in favor, please raise your right hand. All those opposed, motion carries. Mr. Coleman is going to read the next three articles, 13, 14, and 15. They all deal with bylaws, and so we're going to vote on them as one vote on a consent calendar, unless somebody has an objection and would like to pull it out separately. Mr. Coleman.
All right. Move to approve Article 13 as printed in the warrant, except the words "to do" or "act thereon."
Do I have a second?
Second.
Do I have a Finance Committee recommendation?
Finance Committee recommends.
Article 14.
Okay, I move to approve Article 14 as printed in the warrant, except the words "to do" or "act thereon."
Do I have a second?
Second.
Do I have a Finance Committee recommendation?
We recommend. Finance Committee recommends.
Article 15.
Move to approve Article 15 as printed in the warrant, except the words "to do" or "act thereon."
Do I have a second?
Second.
Do I have a Finance Committee recommendation?
Finance Committee recommends.
And would you make a presentation on all three articles,
It's
please?
very simple. For Article 13, we're just renaming what was called junk dealers to call it secondhand retailers. I think it's more appropriate for what it covers. In fact, I'll read the bylaw in its entirety here. No person shall carry on the business in the purchase, sale, or barter of junk, old metals, or secondhand articles within the town unless first duly licensed thereof by the Board of Selectmen. Given the number of secondhand stores and consignment shops that we have, it seems like this bylaw deals more with them than, say, a junk dealer, and we just feel that it's a more appropriate name for it. For Article 14, the reorganization of the bylaws, we've basically been adding, as we create new bylaws, just sticking it at the end of the list. And it sort of has become a hodgepodge of the ordering of things. And what we've just done is reordered them so that everything related to essentially town hall, town officers are in the front in the first few. And then we have a general section for areas that do not warrant a separate chapter, and then another relating to the quality of life in town, and then we get into relating to buildings and materials, and finally subjects related to water, whether it's storm sewer or water usage. So we just figured that this is sort of a logical means to organize. Could you do it differently? Sure. This is just what we came up with. And for 15, again, over the years as bylaws have been created, they've been in many different formats. Some are using just numbers to go through every section within a chapter. Others are more in outline format. Since most were in that format, we decided to go with that, which is what you see in your warrant article. Do other people might have a preference for something else? Sure. This is just what we chose to, because as I said, most of the chapters of the bylaws were in this sort of format. So we had revised all of them, placed a draft on the town's website that was on beginning of May. So if you had a chance to look through it. The only other thing that we have changed in it is that in some cases, one bylaw will refer to another bylaw, and we changed those numbers to make sure that it's referencing the correct bylaw. So that was the other change in it. And also going from using Roman numerals to number all the chapters, since we've had some problems with it. And it's also that although Roman numerals are kind of a nice old-fashioned way of doing things, is when you look at them at a glance, you can't really read them too quickly. So we just made it just, okay, we just use Arabic numerals for numbering of the chapters. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Discussion. I recognize the microphone to my right.
Cornelia Keenan, Great Road still. In Article 14, you have no gaps. So what happens if you have something that you want to add having to do with town government?
Thank you for bringing that up. I neglected to mention that. We probably would just keep adding it at the end, and just maybe like every 5 years, see how much is added, and just come back and redo this. I think it's easier than trying to say, oh, between 7 and 8, oh, we'll make a 7A, and do that. That gets just as confusing.
Then on Article 15, does this apply to the zoning bylaw too?
We are not doing anything with the zoning bylaw. We're the town bylaw, and we'll let the planning board deal with the zoning bylaw.
Okay.
We basically don't want anything to do with zoning bylaws.
I recognize the microphone to my right.
Loretta West, Apple Ridge. Because Article 12 passed, I make a motion to add to the end of the list, Chapter 35.
You don't need to do that. We will add them because of the things that were passed.
That's right.
That will automatically be added to the end.
Where does it say that?
That's just how this works.
Well, I'd like to make a motion.
Mr.
Well, you can't do anything in Article 12. Article 12 is closed.
No. We passed Article 12, and I'm making a motion to add to the end of the list, Chapter 35, Affordable Housing Trust.
Mr. Moderator, actually, the Affordable Housing Trust is named Article 35 already in the motion that was passed, and then in the revolving funds, it was already named Section 36. And so, to the presenter's point, they need not be added because they're already numbered accordingly.
Well, I don't see it numbered there.
Any further discussion? Okay, so we're going to have one vote for all three articles unless there is an objection. Okay, all those in favor of all three articles, please raise your hand. All those opposed, raise your hand. Motions carry.
Thank you.
Before we go to Article 16, results of Article 11, with the majority, yes 250, no 12. The article carries. Could I have a motion, please, on Article 16?
Walter Latta, Waltham Street. I'd like to withdraw Article 16, please.
We have a motion to withdraw. It does not require a second. All those in favor of withdrawing Article 16, please raise your right hand. All those opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. So this concludes our annual town meeting. Once we resolve this meeting, we're going to go to the special town meeting, which we had postponed earlier in the evening. May I have a motion to dissolve the annual town meeting?
Bill Coleman, Howard Road. Mr. Moderator, I move that this meeting be dissolved.
Second? All those in favor? All right. So, having concluded the FY 2018 annual town meeting, we shall proceed to the special town meeting for fiscal year 2017, which we recessed earlier in the evening. Still having a quorum here, I therefore call this 2017 special town meeting to order. Again, per section 2.2 of our charter, I'm required to appoint a deputy moderator, and to complete the meeting, in case I'm unable to continue, I would like to nominate Jack McKean. If there is no objection, all those in favor? All those opposed? Okay. Jack, your assistant. The same meeting rules that we had discussed earlier on the first annual town meeting still apply. I will now entertain a motion to waive the warrant as a whole.
Bill Coleman, Howard Road. Mr. Moderator, I move that the reading of the warrant in its entirety be waived but be made part of the record of this meeting, and that the moderator be permitted to refer to each article by subject matter instead of reading each article completely.
Do I have a second? All those in favor? Opposed? Carries. Okay, Mr. De Silva, Article 1.
Article 1. Before we do Article 1, could we just recognize Mr. Coleman and thank him for his efforts every year on behalf of the town and bylaws and everything else. Thank you, Bill. Plus, he has all the motions, so I recognize him. Anyways, Article S1, special town meeting, is a certified cash appropriation, and this is the item that the school committee had referred to earlier, where we made some changes to this original article to fund the school committee with an extra $275,000, and the amounts are listed below. Snow and ice deficit, $385,000. OPEB is $100,000. Capital Stabilization Fund, $146,652. Community Master Plan Project Consultant is $75,000. Roadway and Sidewalk Improvements, $300,000. A DPW F-350 truck with a plow replacement, $45,000. And then the changes led to $275,000 going to the school for extraordinary expenses.
If I could interrupt for a second, I don't think I got a second on the motion. Do I have a second?
Read the motion?
Second. And the Finance Committee recommendation?
Finance Committee recommends.
Want me to go through it again?
Thank you.
All right, so basically on this list, snow and ice deficit we're obviously responsible for every year. OPEB, capital stabilization, and are both essentially savings accounts for, the OPEB is a savings account for other post-employment benefits, which we'll be responsible for in the future, for town employees, pension and other past employment benefits. Capital Stabilization Fund is just that. The master plan project, the town is required by law to have a master plan. Right now, our master plan is outdated by several years. The original ask for this item was $150,000. We reduced it to $75,000 and gave $75,000 to the schools out of this. And then we have the roadway and sidewalk improvements, which are, as some of you know, in some of the parts of town are greatly needed. And then the plow truck is not just a snow plow. They use this truck for everything that the town does. And the extraordinary school expense is something that we worked with the town administrator, the school department, and everybody else in town government to find a way to get $275,000 more to the schools to pay for an extraordinary special education expense that came due this year, or fiscal year 2018.
Mr. Moderator?
Any questions, discussions?
Mr. Moderator?
Yes.
Can I make one comment? My colleagues reminded me that the original vote was on the original amounts for this free cash article by the FinCom. We did not meet after this decision was made. Just a point of clarification, we did not vote on this after the changes were made, because we didn't meet.
So you're voting on it now?
No, we don't have the full committee here.
You got a quorum. You have to make a recommendation, I believe.
Yes.
So you need to vote now.
All right. We're going to vote on the changes to Article S1 as a committee. All in favor?
Here? To here?
So do I have a vote here?
Excuse me?
So let me just quickly explain that I missed asking for a Finance Committee recommendation. When I asked for it, they said they hadn't voted on the changes. They had voted on the original motion, so by law, I have to have a recommendation from the Finance Committee before we can proceed. And so they're now having a quick meeting to decide whether they are recommending or not.
The vote for the Finance Committee is to not recommend this article, these changes to the article.
Okay, so the Finance Committee does not recommend this article. Any further discussion? Presentation?
Question?
Yeah,
Okay, I recognize the center microphone.
Hi, Luann Kataya, 1 Wilson Circle. So this is a special town meeting, so we're talking about 2017 expenditures. So some of these things are 2017, totally get that. So do we, and I can't remember, and I probably should have, but does all of this have to be spent in 2017 or begin to have been spent in 2017?
So I can answer that.
Town council have a comment on that?
Kevin Sweet, Town Administrator. The answer is they become available to expend after approval at town meeting. The intent for most of them as presented beyond the, other than the FY17, would be for FY18. So the answer is it's not to be expended before June 30th of 2017. It's available through FY18. Or, yeah.
I recognize the microphone to my left.
Miles Clancy, Whitney Ave. I'm just wondering if the Finance Committee could walk through the rationale as to their recommendation.
Sure. I'm not sure if I'm speaking for the entire Finance Committee, but I think that, first of all, we haven't had an extended chance to revisit this. And just speaking for the purposes of my vote, I think it's always a risky avenue to go down when you move operating expenses over under free cash, because free cash is not guaranteed to repeat year after year. And once you move, I recognize they're extraordinary expenses, but once you move operating expenses over under free cash, you potentially create some further issues down the road. So just wasn't comfortable with that at the moment.
And so I guess I'm also wondering, as a town, how are we at this point, like 11th hour, sitting here having this discussion, this procedural flub? You know, we can't even, now what do we do from here, right? What happens from here? And how are we not planning this a little more efficiently and effectively up until this point, right? How are we sitting there having this discussion now? That's all.
Maybe you want to speak to about the meetings you had with the school committee?
Yeah, so in sometime in the past 2 months, 3 months, we started to have some discussions with the school committee about some of the budget needs that they had, and specifically within the last 8 to 10 weeks, we had each of us received several, if not dozens, of emails from concerned parents and concerned people in the school committee about these type of things. And we went in to talk about the $376,000. We went to a school committee meeting to talk about $376,000. It was the deficit from the 6.25% request to the 4% request that we offered the schools in our February meeting. At that meeting, I was probably, I don't know, a couple hours prior to the meeting that I attended alone at the school committee meeting with the school committee and a group of parents, that the number 275 came up, and that was an assessment, which was a special ed assessment that was unknown to the school committee before that point. And we had already voted these things in our own meetings. So the $275,000 that you see on the screen, which are the items that we've moved into the $275,000, represented an extraordinary expense. And as part of the rationale that we used to make this decision, to make this change so late in the game, was that it was our opinion, and it's my opinion, that you know, we shouldn't penalize children and the children in the Maynard schools to that effect with that amount of money, that extra $275,000. Now, in doing so, OPEB, capital stabilization, and the community master plan. The community master plan is a 24 to 36 month project, so we can put the extra $75,000 back into that when we get a chance in that, over that period of time. The capital stabilization fund is a savings account. If you save money for a rainy day, telling the school committee and the students that we don't have $275,000 to spend for special ed kind of sounded like a rainy day to the selectmen. And then the final one, the OPEB, again, that's another savings account, and it's a rainy day thing for the pension and the other things. We're going to have that expense come due in a large amount at some other date, and in all likelihood, no matter what we put into OPEB, when the money comes due, we're not going to have enough to cover it. So again, we thought that that was a place we could send the money rather than, the schools rather than OPEB. The other thing about the 3 places we took the money from is we didn't cost one person in the room or one person in the town of Maynard a job or an hour of pay or any salary. These are basically savings accounts and types of programs that don't hurt anyone in town by changing them and putting these monies into the school. It was a last minute change, but we voted, and we voted unanimously that we thought this was the right place and the right time to do this type of thing. And I couldn't agree with the finance committee more that typically you wouldn't want to do these things, but in this instance we thought it was a necessary change to make.
I recognize the microphone to my right.
Thank you. Marie Gunnison, 119 Parker Street. Some of that, it does address some of my concerns. However, it does begin to appear as if when motivated, we can find ways to spend money, save money. In this case, for the school. And I remember the discussion last year on operating expenses out of the free cash program. But if these things are easily reduced, that begs the question, why do we have them? My concern is, what are we giving up, and how might we have to pay for these in the future? increasing these next year?
It's fixed. All right. Next year, we don't anticipate this type of expense. We've had discussions with the school committee, and we've kind of, had the discussion that these are a one-time extraordinary item, and that, going forward, this isn't the type of thing that we're going to be accustomed to doing, and we don't plan on making it a habit. But we also, in meeting with the school committee over the past several months, we now have a plan in place with the school committee to form a group to meet and discuss these issues throughout the year, so we don't have surprises at the end of the year. Does that answer your question, or?
My question is, I guess at this point is, if the budget for the school is growing and it was cut this year, isn't it going to be the same next year, and we'll be faced with the same thing? And these savings programs that we're not contributing to, what are we going to lose by not contributing to those now, and where are we going to have to spend for those in the future?
So the master plan is, like I said, that's a 3-year plan to get it created and finalized and accepted. And so we have, over 3 years, we have the ability to put the $75,000 back into the master plan. The OPEB is an account that we have to fund to pay future benefits for post-employment benefits for our town employees, and it's a fund that's somewhere in the several $million range, and we're just not going to have the money to pay it when it comes due anyways. We're going to only pay our portion of our percent that we have. So the $100,000 we'll make up over time. It's not due for a very long time. So again, we have an opportunity to increase that fund over several years by smaller amounts to get to that point. Better? It's not working. Want me to just yell?
Is it working?
Yeah, it might be working. Nope.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, Ron. Okay.
I recognize the microphone to my left.
Margaret Sullivan, Parker Street. Just to clarify, so with the $275,000 for the schools, what that's doing is just making it so that this year's cuts aren't so deep, so that some of the staff that was on the cuts list might be able to be saved for this year, in the expectations that some of those costs would not be the same coming up next year. So we wouldn't necessarily be creating a structural deficit.
Hi, Dawn Capello from the school committee. Can anybody hear me?
Huh?
Go ahead, Chris. I can.
It's working?
I'd answer it, but I think I'm off. Am I on? Off. On? Meg, that's a great question, and it's probably one of the questions the Finance Committee has. We're certainly hopeful that this is a one-time cost. As a lot of people know, a lot of these expenses are reimbursed. I can just yell. I don't know. Do I just need to yell?
Yeah. Okay.
Hi, Dawn Capello from the school committee. How about now? No. Hello. Stop yelling so I can yell. Hold on. Hold on. Just hold on. So I'll just try to yell. I'm not really a great yeller. So May, that's a great question. We're obviously hopeful that this is sort of a bridge year funding. What we talked about with the selectmen and one of the reasons it seemed at the last minute is we had more discussions after the warrant was printed. So you've got to print it and get out in the mail, and there's deadlines there, so everyone gets it in their house. But we continue having really great discussions. They really feel the pain schools are feeling due to unexpected special education costs coming in at the last minute, which happens. We can't control who's moving in and out of town, and if
clarification. I don't believe the Finance Committee can vote in an unposted, non-public meeting, having been a former chair. But I could be wrong. But in any event, if the vote stand, could we hear what the vote was?
Town meeting is a public meeting that is posted, so it is,
But no one could hear the deliberation.
Is it working?
Yes.
I'm Robert Bartlett again. I have property on 174 Great Road. I'm at 174 Great Road, and my issue happens to be with the sidewalk and the road. I've been down City Hall many times, and the last supervisor down there threw me out. He said he's never doing anything ever on my property or the road. When they plow up the asphalt. I've had piles of that down at the other end of my house. They have ponds there. Women walk their kids in carriages. When they get to my place, they have to walk in the road. That's not really very good when we've had weekends like this one or wintertime. And the road also, somebody back when we were in Washington for a while, long time, I guess the road affected him. He went through my 3-rail fence. It has to deal with roadway and sidewalk improvements. I don't know if it's just a sidewalk, a state issue or a town issue. I think the town's responsibility and the state reimburses them, but I don't know. Somebody or people from the board should go by there and see what, and the school kids cross the street either before going home or somebody should look at it, because if somebody gets killed there, you're going to put up a lot more money than what you see here.
Yeah. Mario Salbora, Taylor Road. I just want to say that this is exactly what happens when you don't watch the spending. You have to dip into other places. Be careful how you're spending so you don't have to do this. This is not a good thing to do. I agree with the finance committee. We should do it because I don't want to get the teachers fired. But watch the spending.
We'll do our best. Is it on? It's not, right? Can you hear us now? Okay, we'll do our best. We did vote just now. We voted 3-1 against. I will give you my impression, and I would ask my colleagues to give you theirs. I happened to attend the meeting where the Board of Selectmen announced this decision that they had come to with the school committee, and so was Peter Campbell, who's the chair of this finance committee. While we have, and I have, reservations of doing everything at the 11th hour, as people have discussed, my view is that what we need to do is what Chris and others have been talking about, Don and others, is throughout the year, starting more like in June and July, be talking about these issues and being prepared for them so they don't come across as 11th hour. I don't believe that the decision to do this is necessarily wrong. I believe that it's just unfortunate that it happens at a time when we really need to be funding and having policies, and I know the town administration is working very hard to do that, so that we have a baseline of what we intend to do month to month, year to year, leading up to the budgets being created in January, and then reviewed in a very disciplined way from January to May, which it has been, by the way. So the shortfall, as Don has and Mary have expressed, came very late in the game. And I think it's probably a little harsh to say that we haven't planned for this. These are unexpected circumstances. Is this the right way to do it? You can, thank you. Is this the right way to do it? I have one. You can come and engage all year long, as people have described. Coming to a town meeting, as I did before I got on this board, and expecting to get all the answers is probably unrealistic. So I would say again, my view is, in a bad situation, this is a way to tide over, but it is not a sustainable way, and we will fight to make sure we have a more sustainable process in the future. However, I voted yes on this one tonight.
So I'd like to echo my colleagues' comments. I too do not believe that this is the wrong course of action to take. With that said, though, the Finance Committee had not had a chance to review this. As it was mentioned, a couple of us had actually been to and have heard the proposal before tonight. I believe the first time I actually heard about this, was on Facebook from a posting. Beyond that, though, it's Finance Committee's job to understand what is being recommended, and the fact is that we did not have the opportunity to do that. With that said, FinCom is not, by recommending against the acceptance of this article, or the special article, taking away the right of the people to vote in town. So we leave it to you to make that decision. We did not get the chance to review it and feel that it would be inappropriate to make any decision otherwise.
I'm Jill. I'm one of the newest members of the Finance Committee. So I'd like to echo what had been said before. I had originally voted no on this because this is the first I have seen this. So I have not had a chance to understand what these numbers mean, and I did not feel it was appropriate for me to vote. I knew as it was printed, that's what we talked about. So I did not feel comfortable voting yes on this, because I think for us to understand the impact of this, we would need to know about this before. I was not present at these other meetings where this was discussed before, so this is the first time I am seeing this change.
Okay, so we're a legislative body, and so as the legislators, we're the executors that we're going to have to make an executive decision with not complete information, which is something that an executive has to do regularly. So I recognize the microphone to my left.
Hi, thank you. I'm Sarah Donnelly, Parker Street. If two of the Finance Committee members were at that meeting, how did that information not get back to the Finance Committee as a whole, and how did you not have a meeting or at least a discussion to determine that this needed to be discussed or, enlightened upon yourselves before we got here tonight?
Can I answer that, Mr. Moderator?
Yes.
So, public hearing rules are quite strict. We cannot, without having a public notice, have an open discussion by email or by email or even conversations. So we meet every 2 weeks. We did not have a scheduled meeting after this vote was just taken, and as you've heard from the committee members, they were not able to deliberate on it.
Okay, thank you.
I recognize the Senator Mike.
I'm Kathy Larson at 13 High Street, and just occurs to me that we've already approved the budget for the school, and that budget assumed that they were going to get this. So if we vote no on this, what does that do to the school budget that we just approved?
It doesn't. This is not included in the school budget.
I know, but the school budget that we approved assumed that they wouldn't have to cover this 275 because it would be covered under this other category.
The numbers don't include this 275,000.
Right.
For the budget.
And they so my
It wasn't
understanding is
assumed.
it's something that you have to pay, right?
It was, it was not assumed in their budget.
Right.
This is over and above what we've already approved in the budget in order to make the shortfall for what they asked for level service.
Right. So if you
And that's
don't,
not
if
all.
we don't approve this tonight, the school doesn't get this money.
Correct.
Correct.
And we approved a school budget that didn't have this money in it because they thought they didn't need it in their budget because it would be in this budget.
No.
It's not the way it works.
Okay,
No.
all right, so I
No,
misunderstood how it worked.
So the school budget that Mary spoke about earlier was the budget that we did in Article 8.
Right,
That this money and these monies are totally separate and don't have any bearing or any effect on the Article 8.
Right.
This is a totally separate
okay.
pot of money, if you will.
But does the town still have to somehow come up with 275,000?
Mary, do you have an answer?
If we didn't get this additional money, there would be further and deeper cuts.
Okay, that's what I thought. So you would have to go back to what the school had planned on and cut 275,000 out of.
So,
Something.
sorry,
So
Mr. Moderator, I didn't announce myself. Justin Hem, Vice Chair, School Committee. We have actually voted on a panel of cuts that covers the full deficit. That's $650K approximately. Since that time, we have met with the Board of Selectmen, and they identified ways to come up with additional revenue. This $275,000 that is attached to this article would be an opportunity for us to restore some of the cuts that have already been made. And if this motion passes, then we can go back to work, deliberate, work with the members of the community, members of the school administration, the teachers, the staff, to identify the biggest priorities and figure out what we can put back.
I have a follow-on question.
Yes, go ahead.
Can I ask it? So when you went through the budget earlier for the school, and there were a couple things that we were going to cut, secretaries and things like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So those are those itemized cuts that you were talking about?
Those are the itemized cuts, yes.
Okay. So if you don't get this, then you have to cut those. If you
Then the
do
cut-
get this, then maybe you don't have to cut those, or you could add, okay, got it. Thank you.
In very simple terms, yes, without going into like painfully deep detail.
Okay, no further discussion. I'll call for a vote. Ballot number 23. This is the secret ballot and a majority vote.
I'm kind of mad at Peter. I think you guys are very eloquent. I said, we don't got this far. This is late in the game to do this. And, what's going to happen is we're going to see technical. So, when do we need
All right, Mr. De Silva. So can you go ahead and move the article, and we'll have it up in a second. Oh.
Hello?
Hello? Make the motion.
All right, we're on to Article S2, Special Town Meeting Number 2, the Sewer Stabilization Fund Appropriation. Move to approve Article S2 as printed in the warrant, except the words "to do or act thereon."
Do I have a second? And the Finance Committee recommendation?
I'm pretty sure the Finance Committee recommends. No, it's okay.
Presentation.
So as the slide says, this money is to cover a shortfall in revenue, the expenses incurred for capital repairs and revenue shortages last year.
Okay, any questions? There being no questions, I'll call for a vote, which we'll have to wait for the counters. But when we do vote, it will be ballot 24. It will require a 2/3 vote because this is coming from the stabilization fund, and it's a secret ballot because it's more than $10,000. I believe WAVM students have gotten a lesson in crisis management this evening, and they've done very well. Okay, if you will mark your ballots, number 24 for Article S02. Okay, before we move to Article 3, the results of Article 1, 225 yes, 28 no, the article carries. Mr. Gavin.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I move to approve Article S3 as printed in the warrant, except the words "to do" or "the act thereon."
Do I have a second? Second. Do I have a Finance Committee recommendation?
Finance Committee recommends.
Presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Ladies and gentlemen, as you know, we, through a 1.5% real estate tax surcharge, we have the CPC, or the Community Preservation Reserve Fund, that we utilize to do various projects on historic and open space and community housing. And this year, the Community Preservation Fund request is for, and I'll list them down, and if you have questions on them, you can read through the sponsor comments for the sake of time. But for the from the Historic Preservation Reserve Fund, an amount of $1,180 for Honoring Our Ancestors project, with unexpected funds as of June 30th being returned to the funding source. From the Historic Preservation Reserve Fund, the amount of $11,395 for the Art Space Cupola Restoration Project, with the unexpected funds as of June 30th being returned. From the Open Space Reserve Fund, the amount of $20,000 for the Maynard Conservation Fund. From the Community Housing Reserve Fund, $32,000 for the Powder Mill Circle Door Preservation Project, with unexpected funds being returned as of June 30th. From the Budgeted Reserve Fund, $60,000 for the Green Meadow School Playground Renovation Project, with unexpected funds as of June 30th, 2021 being returned to the funding source. From the Budgeted Reserve Fund, $50,000 for the Fowler Field Restoration Project, with unexpected funds as of June 30th, 2019 being returned. And from the Budgeted Reserve Fund, the amount of $30,000 for the Veterans Memorial Park Project, with unexpected funds as of June 30th, 2019 being returned to their funding source. And the description of what each of those projects is included in the sponsor comments, but if you have any other questions, I'm glad to answer them.
Thank you. Discussion. I recognize the microphone to my right.
Tim Egan, 103 Summer Street. Last town meeting, it was stated by the schools that no further tax-based money was going to be sought after for the playground after we approved $275K for phase one, so to speak. It was originally presented as not a phased project, and no further equipment was going to be needed or replaced. Can CPC or school committee clarify why another 60 grand is warranted for a project that's already over $310,000?
Thanks, Tim. I appreciate the opportunity to sort of rehash January and this evening. So in January, I spoke to the article. Those of you who were here may recall we were looking for some funds to deal with the drainage issues and some pathway issues, sort of the underneath and the guts of the playground. And we did ask for free cash or capital stabilization at that one. We worked with the selectmen, and that was the fund they suggested. And as Tim knows, from being a selectman now, one of the first things you learn on these boards about the various different pots of money can be a little bit overwhelming. What I said at the time was that we would not be looking for any additional tax money for the playground, and I want to own that, and I was not meaning to misrepresent anything. What I was thinking in my mind and what I had said to the Finance Committee and other committees was that I would not be, the school committee would not be looking for additional free cash or capital stabilization. What I further said was that there would be 3 other efforts to fully complete the playground, that being fundraising, school committee funds, and grants. The fundraising has happened. The kids have raised about $2,000 at the Green Meadow School this year. The school committee set aside funding from last year's budget towards this project at the request of the CPC. They asked us to set aside money so they could potentially match the money, and we met that obligation. And lastly, when I spoke about grants in January, that's where I mistakenly, really I didn't mean to, but I always call the CPC grant money because it's a grant writing process. You have to go through this process with the CPC. They do excellent vetting of all the projects. They've done lots of projects in town, right? Buying the golf course, painting the cupola at Art Space, and the cemetery fence. So really, they vet these projects and they award the grants, and then they're voted on at town meeting. So I completely own that. I refer to that as a grant process, but I do fully recognize that it's part Maynard taxpayer money and Massachusetts taxpayer money in the match. So I own that. It was not my intention. I was certainly not nefariously meaning to do it. I was probably a typical Italian, speaking faster than my words and brains could match up at the time. So I'm not a great public speaker. So I apologize if I seem to mislead anyone. That was not my intention.
I recognize the center microphone.
Karen Sullivan, 11 Fowler Street. Mine is a comment because I work as a home health aide and I go to Powder Mill Circle a lot. And I have to say that this project makes me happy because it is desperately needed. It is a really, everything is just kind of grungy over there. and it really, it just, that particular complex needs a lot of help. And I am so happy that this is, up for a vote. That was just a comment.
Thank you. Recognize Mike to the right.
Tim Egan, 103 Summer Street. To follow up on Don's statement there that the CPC follows their own guidelines and procedures and vets the projects. I'm curious about this playground one because I went searching for the proposal and couldn't find it. It's the CPC states a deadline and says they vote on proposals on a final date. I'm curious if anyone from the CPC tonight can tell me why an undocumented proposal was slipped in past the deadline and approved for town meeting.
Recognize the microphone to my right.
Hi, I'm Tom Hesbuck. I'm in the CPC and I'm the liaison for this project. So to clarify a couple of points, you can actually go in and review the CPC minutes. We obviously don't have time for that here tonight, but this project from the get-go is a almost 3.5 year long project. Presented from the get-go as a multi-phase project back from when Selectman Egan was actually on the CPC at the very beginning when I joined CPC. So if you follow the timeline of this project, the phase 1 of the project was for a study to determine what exactly needed to be done to remediate the playground for the drainage. There was about approximately $50,000 allocated for that study. The results of that study resulted in a very large amount of money for remediation, which was brought to town meeting and approved as the second phase, which is what Chair Capello just spoke of. And then the third piece of it, which if you go back over a year in the CPC's timeline, was for the equipment and the play structures and improvements to the playground, was requested by the CPC, or requested by the school committee and the parent group for 2016. However, CPC recommended withholding that and not bringing it to the town because it was not clear how that would be benefiting the town without the remediation being done that the town voted for at the last town meeting. So now that the town had made that recommendation, the $275,000 was approved. CPC then revisited the deferred application, and that is what you see before you. So there's no hidden application. It's actually clearly marked in the minutes where the application was deferred and until we actually could have an assured project. In other words, we didn't want to allocate funding to a project that was not assured to be complete. So we feel that the CPC did its fiscal responsibility in ensuring that all the ducks were in a row before we then allocated money to a project that could not succeed. It's part of our vetting process, as Selectman Egan should know from being on the committee. So.
Thank you. I recognize the microphone to my left.
So in listening to Selectman Egan's comments, it occurred to me that the school is still about $400,000 short of their budget for next year. And after Mary's very eloquent presentation, I'm really glad that Selectman Egan took the time to come down and quibble about $60,000. So thank you very much for your detective work.
Recognize the microphone in the center.
Luann Katayo, 1 Wilson Circle. So regarding the budgeted reserve fund, what is the current balance in that account, and what percentage does that $60,000 represent?
I didn't have that. I have number. Mike has it. I have it.
Yeah, I was going to say Mike Guzzo could speak to the numbers in the accounts specifically.
Yeah, the present balance in the budgeted reserve prior to any of this happening is roughly $380,000 at the current time.
So it's a pretty big chunk of the overall money that's in the queue waiting and having to compete with other projects. Is that the case?
What was the question? I don't understand.
So what I'm sorry, you didn't get my point?
I think it's about half, a little more than half.
So what I'm saying is that there's $385,000 in that budgeted account for part of the community preservation bucket of money to spend on projects, and there's $385,000 you said in that particular bucket.
Yes.
And the proposal is to spend $60,000 of that money for the one project for the schools that again, for the playground, that's already had how much already allocated to it in town meeting prior? So just want to get all the facts out so everybody understands the pros and the cons and the trade-offs.
Is that a question or a comment? Or
What I'm saying is, again, can you reiterate how much money was appropriated at town meeting last time? And again, and I guess it is a comment, to recognize the overall percentage that this appropriation will dwindle the overall bucket for that account.
Yeah, it didn't come out.
Do we have an answer?
Well, she said it
Previous
was a
money for
comment.
this particular
She said it
project
was a
didn't come out of
comment rather than a
CPC.
question.
We've just been crunching some numbers back here. This is Bethlen Houlihan from the school committee, and I've been involved with this project as well. And it looks like it's 15.7% of the overall, if that is what you are asking.
Okay. Recognize the microphone to my left.
Walter Latta, Waltham Street. Dave, if you don't mind, can you elaborate a little bit more on the Veterans Memorial Park? The reason I ask that is, are we going to be putting up a plaque to honor or to recognize the people that served in Afghanistan, Iraq, before it's overdue or something like that?
My understanding is that this particular allocation is not for the most recent war, but rather for Vietnam veterans who served during the Vietnam era, but were not in the Vietnam, whatever the term is, that was not overseas in the Vietnam conflict itself. So these are for Vietnam veterans from Maynard and there is well over 200, from what I understand, who served honorably in the United States military during the Vietnam era, but they don't get recognized on that plaque because when it was initially put up, they only put up the names of those veterans who actually served in country, per se. So this is for Vietnam. Any others will be coming down the road, and God forbid we have any other wars in our lifetime.
No, I know what you're saying, but I would like to see us maybe make a motion or an amendment to add this or expand on the monument or add a plaque to recognize the Afghanistan and Iraq vets. As you know, there's quite a few in this town that we sent, my two brothers being two out of many, Mr. Ojoletto being another one. But the reason I say that is if we start building this performance area, which I love and I go there too in the summer, are we going to start shrinking down, and then when the time comes to recognize the people that served in Iraq and Afghanistan, we're going to start having a smaller footprint for them?
I don't think Maynard as a community will ever forget our veterans, so we are going to make sure that whenever we can, it's going to be down the road. This, by the way, is not something that came up just this year. The group of people that have been working on getting the names of the Vietnam era veterans have been doing this for probably the last 3 or 4 years. And sometime before that, sort of ramping it up, there have been some private fundraiser that we got a check handed to us, and it just wasn't enough to do the entire project. So any other future development over there would take discussions with the planning board, discussions with the Board of Selectmen, et cetera. But I'm certain that the veterans are not going to be forgotten from this most recent war.
I know that, Dave. Thank you very much.
So, no further discussion. We'll take a vote, but before we do that, I'll give you the results of Article 2. There were 15 noes. If we double that, that's 30. And the yeses have to be 30 or greater, and they were 221, so the motion carries. Okay, so we'll now vote on Article 3, which will be ballot number 25. And this is a secret ballot and a majority vote. Okay, Mr. Creel, if you will do Article 4.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I move to approve Article S4 as printed in the warrant, except the words "to do or act thereon."
Do I have a second? Do I have a Finance Committee recommendation?
Finance Committee recommends.
Presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Purpose of what you can see here and what you can see on the screen. Effectively, the town is only permitted by law to contract up to 3 years without coming to town meeting to seek additional power to contract, to establish a contract beyond the length of 3 years. What this particular request is for is to allow the town to seek a new contract for the contract operation of the Maynard wastewater treatment facility in excess of the 3 years allowed, up to but not exceeding 7 years. The benefit of this is that by extending our contract out for a longer period of time, we generally get a more favorable result in our request for proposal. Thank you.
Discussion. No discussion. This is an open ballot majority vote. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries. Mr. De Silva, if you would move Article 5.
Article 5 is to amend the protective zoning bylaw, use table and definitions, farmer brewery, micro distillery, and cocktail lounge, and move to approve Article S5 as printed in the warrant, except to the words "to do or act thereon." And Mr. Tizzulo from the Planning Board will head the discussion.
Do I have a second? Second. Do I have a Finance Committee recommendation?
Finance Committee recommends.
Do I have a Planning Board recommendation?
Planning Board recommends.
Presentation.
All right, so Article S6 has been withdrawn. Make a motion to withdraw S6.
So we're going to take these individually. I'm sorry if I confuse you. So S5 is going to stand on its own.
Okay, so you want to do them individually?
Yeah, Town Council felt that it would be better to do them individually because there's...
Okay, so 5.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Greg Tizzolo, Chair of the Maynard Planning Board. Thank you. Check. Gregory Tizzolo, Chair of the Maynard Planning Board. The purpose of Article S5 is to establish 3 new definitions for business uses in the town: farmer brewery, micro distillery, micro winery, and cocktail lounge. These are uses, in my understanding, that are defined by state statute, and we're now calling them out individually. And I'll just point out as well, these uses would be allowed only with special permit by the planning board, and the proposal is for allowing them in the business, central business, and healthcare industrial, which is the Millen, Maine project.
Any questions? I recognize the microphone on the right.
Hi, Ellen Greendale on Elmwood Street. Would these permits be in addition to the existing liquor licenses, and would the businesses in question also have to get the current liquor license under the current system?
This is completely separate from the liquor license process, and in my understanding, this is a planning board approval for a business use.
I see. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Okay, before we vote, I'll give you the results of Article 3. Noes 22, yeses 190. The article carries. On Article 5, this is a secret ballot, 2/3, and you will be using ballot number 26. ballot right there. Okay, Article 6.
Mr. Moderator, I move to withdraw Article 6.
There's been a motion to withdraw Article 6. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries. Article 7.
Article 7, amend the protective zoning bylaw, water supply protection zone. Move to approve Article S7 as printed in the warrant, except the words "to do or act thereon."
Do I have a second? Do I have a Finance Committee recommendation?
Finance Committee recommends.
Presentation.
Excuse me. Point of order. Mr. Moderator, Planning Board recommendation?
Planning Board recommends. The purpose of this article is, from my understanding, fairly administrative. We're making a change to the water supply protection zone in town to bring the town in compliance with the Massachusetts wellhead protection regulations. This change has been vetted by our town engineer as well as by a peer consultant, and we recommend it.
Discussion. I recognize the microphone to my left.
George Yates, 13 Michael Road. What's it mean? If you're, like, I'm living in that area. What's it going to do?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that, please?
What is the? What are you rezoning? Does it mean we can not do things, or is it just protecting the land, or what?
I'll do my best.
Mr. Moderator, I could ask that we recognize Aaron McCloskey, Director of Public Works.
Yes.
Good evening. My name is Aaron McCloskey, Director of Public Works for the town of Maynard. So what this does, basically, if you look in your packet, it highlights some removals and some additions, mostly clerical. And some of the restrictions and what this is going to allow the town to do is have better control in these areas. So the next article you're going to see is a bylaw protection map. It is basically an appendix of this, but it outlines areas in our town where we have our current ground wells that supply the drinking water for the town, and what this does is put some additional restrictions on the uses in those areas to protect those wellhead supplies. Our wells can be influenced by groundwater and surface water within a certain radius, Zone 1 and Zone 2 as they're referred to in the bylaw. So what this does is you're going to see some additional usage such as storage of sludge and septage, storage of sodium chloride and chemically treated abrasive chemicals used in snow removal, storage of commercial fertilizers and storage of animal manure, and storage of soil, loam, and other kind of materials, and some removals. It increases that restriction, and what it's going to force people to do, or commercial entities that move into those areas, is apply for a special permit for the town to be able to use one of those uses within the Zone 1 and Zone 2. So it just kind of restricts the use. It shouldn't affect the everyday average resident if you have a property in that area. And this is something that's been vetted by Mass DEP. We actually sent them this. They have approved it and sent it back, and are requiring us to adopt it for approval of our Water Management Act permit, which is our licensure to withdraw water from our 7 wells in town.
Thank you. I recognize the microphone to my right.
Hi, Marie Gunnison, 119 Parker Street. That was my question. I'm not sure it was entirely answered. When I look at this map and look at these regulations, I was wondering if this is going to put on the residents covered by this map these new regulations. They'll have to go back and retrofit their homes to comply, because there's nothing in here that seems to preclude that. There doesn't seem to be any grandfather clause or existing use.
Aaron, would you like to address that too, as well?
Mr. Moderator, Town Council, I can address part of this. Is a zoning change, and so 40A Section 6 Paragraph 1 regarding pre-existing non-conforming uses applies. And as the DPW Director suggested. The additions are really not really residential issues that typically would occur.
It speaks to oil tanks in the home specifically.
No,
Jason Creel,
Heating oil tanks.
Selectman. Marie, where it does, ultimately, this bylaw has not changed significantly from the previous iteration. What they did do is remove some certain dates. What you're referring to on oil tanks, or for oil tanks where the total capacity is less than 600 gallons, which is more your typical residential. What this does is prevent someone from going in and storing fuel, salt, or other chemicals within the Zone 1, which is 400 feet around a municipal well, or the Zone 2, which is the area beyond 400 feet, that is noted to feed directly into that municipal well. In general, I'm just on a quick look. What they have done is to Aaron's point, they have sort of rearranged this, but they still do not permit fertilizers. They still do not permit, again, I think you mentioned it, Aaron, sodium chloride, chemical treated abrasives for the removal of snow and ice, and storage of manure.
I might add, Mr. Moderator, that the provision regarding oil tanks is existing already and not a change that's being proposed.
Okay, thank you.
I recognize the microphone to my left.
Hi, I'm Dave Hooten, Deer Path, and I live in the Deer Hedge Run development, which is centered around Deer Path. And I'm looking at this map, and I see there's only one little spot of Deer Path where, which is affected by the new zone, and that's exactly where the development swimming pool is, which is, instead of chlorine, they use salt. So what is the effect on our development?
Jason, do you have an answer for that?
I don't have a copy of the map in front of me. Oh, thank you, David. So in general, you're looking at, so you're referring to a small community pool?
Yes.
So in general,
medium-sized community
you would be
pool.
looking at a large commercial operation?
Yeah.
You're also, I think you were also on the very edge of the Zone 2,
Yes.
which is a contributing, so you could be, you may apply, and you may have already been, you may already be under the jurisdiction of a previous special permit.
Okay.
Okay, no further discussion. I shall call for the vote. Before doing that, I will give you the results of Article 5. There were 2 noes, double that is 4, so there has to be yeses greater than 4, and we have 199, so the article passes. I called for the vote before you came up.
I wanted to clarify the previous speaker. I don't think the answer was correct.
You got 30 seconds.
Ron Calabria, Deer Path. I happen to be the treasurer of the condominium he was talking about, and we have no special permit. I guess my question is, 2 questions. One is, why is that area part of a recharge area? There's no town well anywhere within a half a mile of there. And secondly, is that area of the map new in terms of saying it's a Zone 1 or Zone 2?
Hey, good evening. Aaron McCloskey, Director of Public Works. To answer the first part of the question, so we're working together with surrounding communities to get kind of a reciprocal protective area. So that area, Deer Path, and that section on the east side of town, the town of Sudbury actually has a water well just over the Sudbury-Maynard town line. So we've included that as a protection to their wellhead area as well. So it's not just the town of Maynard, it's the Sudbury, and they're doing the same for us. We're working together with other communities.
Okay, I read that. I guess the question is that something that's new?
Microphone, please.
Is that something that's new?
It
In
is
that
new.
area of town, because it's never been that designation before.
Correct. So this is a new map. There's never been an officially adopted map. There has been copies of maps that have been floating around that have been referenced in the old bylaws. With this new addition, this is a new, permanent, formally adopted map.
So I guess the answer is we don't know what the impact is to that area.
As far as residential restrictions, or?
Snow being piled up with salt, I read, the pool that the other gentleman raised.
Correct.
So how does that get resolved?
I don't have an answer to that. We'd have to discuss it further. So the amendment in the bylaw itself, the new additions that are going in don't reference any type of chemical storage for pools. That was already pre-existing. So like I said earlier, the new lines or the new verbiage is all underlined. It's more specific towards sludge, treated chemicals for snow removal, fertilizers and animal manure. The pool and other chemical uses were pre-existing. So it won't change any current uses.
Okay, so I'll call for the vote. This is a secret ballot, 2/3, and it's going to be on ballot number 27. Mr. De Silva, would you move the next article, please?
Next article is number 8, Water Supply Protection District Map. The second one, and I move to approve Article S8 as printed in the warrant, except the words "to do or act thereon."
Do I have a second? Do I have a Finance Committee recommendation?
Finance Committee recommends.
Do I have have a planning board recommendation?
Planning board recommends.
And presentation?
Not really, it's the map was prepared by professional engineers and approved by our town engineer. And it, as far as I know, it complies with the state requirements for this type of governing map. Thank you.
Discussion. There being no discussion, I'll call for a vote. It's going to be on ballot number 28 for Article 8, and this is a secret 2/3.
Just the last few minutes. No, certainly not in full view of the public. That's right. I don't know, people might have been tired. I am. Oh, you think so? I haven't heard much about it around town. Oh, really? I haven't heard much, but we'll see. You never know.
The results of Article 7, 10 noes. We double that as 20. We need at least 20 to pass. We got 151, so the motion carries. Mr. De Silva, Article 9.
Article 9 is a transfer of funds from capital stabilization to the fire station building project. Move to approve Article S9 as printed in the warrant, except the words "to do or act thereon."
Do I have a second? Second. And do I have a Finance Committee recommendation?
Finance Committee recommends.
Presentation.
The presentation is going to be made by Chief Stowers of the Maynard Fire Department.
Anthony Stowers, Fire Chief. So what we're asking for is funds to come up with schematic designs or schematic drawings to allow us to come up with an accurate estimate at a future town meeting to request funds to replace the fire station. The other part of the money that we're asking for is to cover an owner's project manager, a part of the owner's project manager that we would like to hire to do this process. Hiring an OPM at this stage, owner's project manager, is something that is recommended by the Commonwealth. Now, just to give you a little bit more background on this, we've had a fire station building committee for a little over a year now, and we've met regularly since last May, and we've done a lot of work, and one of the members of the committee is actually the building superintendent in the town of Newton. He also recommended that we start the OPM search early on, so we've done that. The fire station problem is not a new one, and we're not here tonight to do the whole presentation, but just to give you some background, this problem has been gone, or the issue of replacing the fire station first began in 2007. There's been 2 different engineering studies done on different components of the building. The building does need to be replaced. This is the first step for us to do that. Again, hiring the owner's project manager, or the OPM, will help us in developing the schematic designs that we need to move forward and come up with an accurate cost estimate to give to the people, and so you can vote on it. Money for this will be used from capital stabilization. This is not going to increase any taxes. Any money that is not used will stay in capital stabilization.
Discussion. I recognize the center microphone.
So you've been given $750,000 so you can build a $1 million facility, and since that's taken a little while, you want to build a second facility for $100,000 to house a 32-year-old fire truck. Seems rather stupid. Just get on with that project.
Well,
And you can go to other fire departments and see what they did.
Sir, first of all, that article is the next article, but I'm going to address that because you brought it up a couple times tonight. We received a $750,000 grant from the federal government. We applied for the grant in 2015. It was awarded in 2016. The purpose of that money is to replace a 32-year-old aerial ladder. We asked for and were granted our matching funds, which were $266,000 at the January special town meeting. At that town meeting, we told everybody right up front that we were going to have to buy a temporary structure for this truck. The truck we're replacing was custom built in 1985, delivered to us in 1986. The vendor that we work with for our fire apparatus will not even build that truck again. So we're trying to replace an older piece of, actually we're replacing two pieces of apparatus with one. We just couldn't get it to fit in the building. So the temporary structure is to house a brand new fire truck that will be delivered over the summer, not the existing 32-year-old truck.
Okay, but we just passed earlier on in the beginning, if you don't use it, you got to tear it down, throw it out.
Yep, I'm glad you brought that up, and I was going to bring that up with the next article, but that is not the case. This is a reusable building. The cost for this structure, even though we're not talking about that article now, but the cost of that structure is estimated to be about $50,000. Originally, we were looking at a bunch of options. We put the number in there a little higher than we thought we were going to need to be safe. It's a temporary structure that will be reused by another town department. It can be taken down and used by DPW or another town department that needs it. It's not going to be thrown away. It is a reusable building.
Okay. Good luck.
I recognize the center microphone.
Hi, I'm Kathy Larson from 13 High Street, and so I would just like to understand what are all of the reasons why we need a new fire station. I mean, what's deficient in the? I'm sure you've done a lot of study, but I don't know the results of that. So I'd just like to hear kind of the key highlights of what the problem is.
The biggest driver is the size of the apparatus floor. That's not the only problem, certainly, but the size of the apparatus floor, which is where we house all the fire apparatus, was not originally designed to house fire apparatus the size it is built today. So that's the biggest driver. We have 10-foot doors, and so we have to be very cognizant when we order equipment how big it can be. The ladder truck, we just couldn't get one under 10 feet. There's nobody in the area that has one under 10 feet. So that's the biggest driver. Other things that are wrong with the building is very old. It's 60-plus years old now. The roof does leak. It's had multiple repairs just in the 5 years I've been here. The windows need to be replaced. There is no HVAC system in it. The plumbing system is failing. There's no access to the second floor for disabled individuals, so it does not meet ADA or any Commonwealth of Massachusetts requirements for disability access. There's a long list of deficiencies. We can make that available to anybody that wants it. There was a study that was conducted in 2007 that outlines the major deficiencies of the building. There was another one conducted in 2015. Anybody that wants that, I'd be happy to give it to them.
Recognize the microphone to my right.
Gregory Tizzolo, 1 Randall Road. Can you share with us the site or sites that will be the subject of this study?
We're not conducting a study. I think there's some confusion here. The purpose of what we're asking for this article is to fund an owner's project manager and to do schematic design. We do have a location that we're looking at, which is property that's currently owned by the owners of Mill and Main on Sudbury Street across from St. Bridget's Church. That process right now, we're in the middle of vetting that, in the process of vetting that site out to make sure that it's suitable for a fire station. Once we get that information back, we will go back to the owners of Mill and Main and negotiate a fair price. Once we come up with a fair price, we'll sign a purchase and sales, which will be contingent upon approval at a town meeting in the future. Did that answer your question?
I recognize the microphone to my right.
Hi, just one question. Was the schematic design bid put out, was that put out for bid? Or is that sole source?
We used a company called Thorne Whittier in 2015 to do a feasibility study on the existing fire station. Because we use them already, we don't have to go out to bid. So it's been out to bid once.
You don't have to, but this is not a schematic design for the existing fire station. This is
Correct.
a new building. So the question was, did you put that out for bid?
No, we did not.
Okay, thank you.
Recognize the microphone in the center.
Ron Calabria from Deer Path. I'm the chairman of the Fire Station Building Committee. So obviously I'd like you to approve this. We've been very cautious in how we approached this, and there were sort of three things you could do. We could ask for this consulting money to try to get a proper cost, or we could say, gee, we need X amount of money that we sort of made up based on factors and ask you to approve that, or we could say, gee, let us buy the land first. And this is the most prudent way to go about this. What the intent of this is, as the chief said, is we want to be able to, in the near future, come forward and say, this is what a fire station would look like, and this is exactly what it would cost. At that point, the town can decide whether you want to approve that or not. This does not commit us to do anything other than to get an understanding, and we're very committed in the building committee to make sure the town makes the right decision, the decision they want, and based on facts. That's why we need to do this. In terms of putting this particular small piece of design out to bid, this is saving us a significant amount of money by using the vendor we've already contracted with, because a significant part of the work we already paid them for. So now we're just asking us to, the schematic diagram is basically allows you to do costs. It's not a construction set of prints. It doesn't allow you to build anything. It just says, based on that piece of land, based on the specifications the chief and the committee has given them, it gives us pretty clear cost for what's going to be done. So I'd appreciate the approval of this. I think it will get you to make the right decision in the future.
Thank you. I recognize the microphone on the right.
Eve Schluter, Chandler Street. I'm all for a new fire station. I'm just questioning appropriating this money now without having a site chosen. And I understand what Mr. Calabria just said, but if you're developing schematic drawings, and I'm not sure how universal they are from site to site. So I'm just questioning, and especially this says in here that there's going to be, money is going to be used for land surveys and soil tests, and I'm curious if it's going to be used on multiple sites, and when and how the townspeople actually get to vote on that, other than just bringing up one site in particular for purchase, because we do have existing land that should be adequately assessed before we look to buy new land with money we really don't have right now.
That's a good question. So we are not planning on spending any money until we have a site secured. We've been in this process for quite a few months now. We had hoped to be a little bit further along in the vetting of the site by now, but it just hasn't worked out that way. So if we are not able to, if the site doesn't come back as suitable, we are not able to come to an agreement with the landowner, then we certainly are not going to spend that money. That would be foolish, and then we'll have to go back to the drawing board, look for another suitable site, and then repeat this process next year.
Hi,
Microphone on my right.
Melissa Egan, Summer Street. I have a question. I remember being at town meeting a number of years ago when we were talking about building a fire station. We own the land. There were plans drawn up. There was a site that was all ready to go. Are there already plans already drawn up that we've paid for a fire station?
The short answer is yes and no. There was schematic designs drawn for a site on Rockland Ave. That was done in 2009. We vetted 13 sites, this committee vetted 13 sites, and that Rockland Ave is not a very good site for a fire station. Now, when that site was originally proposed back in 2009, I wasn't here then, but from all the research that we've done and people we've talked to, it was done because the town was submitting a grant, a federal grant, and at the time, under the American Recovery Act, the federal government was supplying up to 50 fire station grants, one for each station. So at that time, the federal government would have paid $5 million, or I believe it was $5 million, of the total $6 million cost for a fire station. So if that's the case, if the federal government came to us next week and said, we'll give you, 90% of the cost of a fire station if you build it at Rockland Ave, we'd probably do the same thing again this year. But it is not a great site. All of the sites that we looked at, there was a cost involved. So you're correct that the town does own that land, but there's still a cost involved in developing that land for a fire station. In that particular case, we're going to have to do some significant intersection upgrades. So even though the town owns that land, there is a significant cost to put a fire station on it. Back to your other question about plans. There were schematic designs drawn up for that site. They will not work at this particular site that we're looking at now. So does that answer your question? Okay.
Okay, no further discussion. I'll call for a vote, but first, the results of Article 8. There were 9 noes, double that, that's 18, so we have to be greater than 18, and it's 136, the article carries. So, vote on Article 9, it's secret ballot, 2/3, on ballot number 29.
We won. We have secured the right to get destroyed by Cleveland in the next round. It's all right. It'll feel better when we get to that one draft next.
And while we're waiting for the counters, I just want to remind everybody that there's opportunities to volunteer for different committees in town. You asked a lot of great questions tonight, so hopefully you'll join a committee and make us all better.
What's that?
Okay, Dave, you move Article 10, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Moderator. I move to approve Article S10 as printed in the warrant, except the words "to do" or "act thereon."
Do I have a second? Do I have a Finance Committee recommendation?
Finance Committee recommends.
Thank you. Presentation.
Yep, similar to the last article, I'm going to turn it over to Chief Stowers, although I think he already did his presentation for this one.
Okay, so again, some of this is repeat, so I'm sorry to bore you with it, but we did purchase a new ladder truck, and it's replacing a 32-year-old fire apparatus that was built in 1985 and delivered to us in 1986. We did purchase, most of this was purchased with funds from the federal government. 75% of the overall cost, almost 75%, was paid for by the federal government. The grant was submitted in 2015, and this was actually submitted multiple times. I believe this was the third time that I submitted a grant for this piece of apparatus. The truck that we have being delivered is too high for the building. And I went through this before, but we have a 10-foot opening. We're actually restricted to less than that because of the angle of the ramp and the whole 9 yards. But the fact is that we couldn't get anything to fit in there. We probably could have got another piece of equipment that was custom made. I can assure you the cost would have been far more than what we paid for it. This new ladder truck is a quint, which means it can operate as an engine or a ladder. And again, the reason that we did that is we're actually getting rid of 2 pieces of equipment and pushing them, merging them into one. So the existing ladder truck that we have now does not have a pump. The new one will. The reason it's called a quint is because it has ground ladders, it has a pump, it has a water tank, it has an aerial, and it has fire hose. The structure that we are purchasing is a purchase, will be around $50,000. Again, when we put this proposal together and we had to vet this out, we had to have this warrant article ready for March. We weren't sure on the cost. We weren't sure if we were going to purchase something or lease something. And the longer that we went on in the process, the more we found out that it would be more cost effective to purchase something. And again, that structure can be reused. Again, funds from this will also be taken from the capital stabilization project. And again, we don't expect them to exceed $50,000. Anything not used in this article will remain in capital stabilization.
Okay, any questions? I recognize the microphone to the right.
Adam Kahn, 93 Acton Street. So the plans are to use this until the new fire station is built. Are there further plans by the town for reuse of the structure, or will that be determined once the firehouse is constructed?
Well, it'll probably be determined when we're done with it, but DPW is probably going to end up with it. I mean, they probably have the most use for it. But we don't have any definitive plans yet, but it will be reused probably by the DPW.
Okay, thank you.
I recognize the microphone to my left.
Mario Salbora, Taylor Road. Just so you know, I voted yes on the previous one. So I think we need a fire station. I think the location that you mentioned is perfect. The only thing, and I don't want to get, the fire department is great, and I already got the school administration, yeah, so, and you guys came and put out the fire in my backyard when I was stupid enough to throw coals over the, I'm not sure if you remember that. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, okay, thank you, thank you. So I just want to thank you, and the one thing that I remember from the January meeting, I asked, and somebody else asked the same question, will there be any reoccurring costs if we approve this fire truck? And I remember the answer being no, and I'm seeing this as a cost.
Okay.
Sell it to me more.
Well, I specifically stood right where you are and told everybody we were going to need a temporary structure. There's no reoccurring cost after we purchase the truck, but this is something that we need to do to protect $1 million piece of apparatus until we have a new station built. But I was very clear about that. I'm sorry if you don't recall that, but I specifically did mention that.
I might be forgetting. And if I may just follow on that?
Go ahead.
It's too late? Okay, let's move to vote.
Any other discussion? Before we, we'll be voting on ballot 30. This is a secret ballot, 2/3. Okay, while the counters are counting, I'd like to announce the Article 9 results. No were 23. We doubled that's 46. We had 130, so the article carries. While we're waiting for the counters here on the last things, I would like to give a round of applause to WAVM, who I think really did a great job tonight.